Okay, good evening. Welcome to the, hold on just a second. We got to mute that guy. Sorry about that. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, and we are here at the Freeport High School cafeteria. We have, the majority of the board is here this evening. Maura is not with us, but the rest of us are here in person. Our student rep this evening is Liam. Welcome, Liam. And we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the... Oh, right. We don't have to do attendance. Nobody's remote. That's right. I don't need to use this paper tonight. That's so exciting. Sorry for everyone else who's not usually at our board meetings. So do we have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the March 10th, 2021 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Susanna? Beth, thank you. Any questions? Comments? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Adjustments to the agenda.
I just have one. I'd like to move 8A3 to right before 13B.
So it's basically just moving the budget update to right before the board is deliberating on the budget. So aligning those two pieces. All right. So then we will move on to good news and recognition, which we have a lot of tonight. So that's great news.
Yes, it's great to be having some celebrations tonight, and I will ask Charlie to come up to talk about the Portland Museum of Art National Youth Art Month recipient.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. So annually, the Portland Museum of Art sponsors a student exhibition in March as a celebration of National Youth Art Month. All art teachers from across Maine are invited to select one student work for the showcase. This year, our art teacher, Kimberly Metzger-Mahalik, chose Persephone by Saffron Labos. So please share a huge congratulations with Saffron for her extreme technical skill, incredible patience and perseverance with her art. Thank you very much. Saffron is not here tonight. She could not make it, but we can, I'll let her know that you all give her a huge round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Mellon. And now I would like to ask Mr. Sickles to come up and recognize our wonderful cheerleading squad for their accomplishment.
Good evening. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce the 2021 Western Maine Conference Cheering Championships champions. It is only the second time in school history that has occurred. The last time was in 2017. And when I get out of this meeting, I'm going to send you the video that they taped for the state meet. The state meet will occur this Saturday. It's virtual. All the routines were taped in their home gyms and forwarded, and the judges are judging just like they normally would, but watching a video instead. So I'll send you folks that championship video, and we wish them the best of luck this coming Saturday. To introduce the team, and they're going to come forward and pick up their certificates. A senior, Cadence Burgoyne. Then I've asked them to kind of stay right over here, and we'll get a picture at the end. Senior, Ainsley Decker. A freshman, Bridget Francoeur. Senior Eli Maynard. Junior Jackie Maneri. And another freshman, Lucy Ricker. And our head coach, Cassandra Cotto, and assistant coach, Ellie Bonzagni.
We'll be cheering for you on Saturday virtually.
And now I would like to ask Mr. Mellon to come up to recognize a student for the Congressional Art Award recipient.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my honor to present this award to Alec Gideon, who is here tonight. Alec was selected as the first district winner for the 2020 Maine Congressional Art Awards for his incredible drawing called Gus. The Congressional Art Competition began in 1982 to provide an opportunity for members of Congress to encourage and recognize the artistic talents of their young constituents. Since then, over 700,000 high school students have competed for the honor of having their work shown in the U.S. Capitol. Congresswoman Shelley Pingree selected his work out of all the Gold and Silver Key Art Award recipients in the Maine Scholastics competition. Alec received a Gold Key Award. Gus is now on display in the U.S. Capitol in the Cannon Tunnel. Additionally, Alec's work went on to receive a National Scholastic Arts Silver Medal. While there's typically a June celebration in Washington, D.C. to honor the student artist, COVID canceled those plans. However, we wanted to share our district's pride in all of his virtual art accomplishments. So congratulations, Alec. And we'd love to get you guys to come on up. Yeah. And all the Gideons come on up. We'll take a picture.
So Charlie, where would we go about seeing Gus and
Persephone.
Persephone? I almost said serendipity.
I
Jeez.
can get Ms. Metzger to email it out to.
That would be great.
Yeah,
I'd love to see them.
To the board.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
All right, and after all that good news, we're going to continue the good news with Liam.
All right, yeah, and I do have some great news. First off, I'm going to start off with Latin. So some students from Freeport High School's Latin Club participated in the Spring Curtamen competition, and this is a quiz bowl style game essentially to test knowledge on history and also Latin. And it was kind of difficult this year with everything being online, but we were paired with another school, and I can't remember which one. But we got 4th place as a team with them. The senior boat cruise has been booked for the evening of Wednesday, June 9th. And last Friday, the senior class had a winter carnival at Pineland where we had guard games and also disc golf. So New York Times, I wanted to mention Mary Breyer, Mia Goodwin, Everett Sawyer, Colin Cronin, Riley Simon, and Hunter Town. I think it's town, were selected as finalists in this past fall's Coming of Age in 2020 project hosted by the New York Times. So a new club is starting at the high school. The book club will hold its first meeting this month, and all are welcome to join. They'll meet each Thursday in the library. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, juniors will be taking their SAT exam on April 13th. And Winter Sports Awards were yesterday, and pitchers and catchers began practicing on Monday. And there is a preseason parent info night tomorrow, I believe. Lastly, preseason for all sports will begin on March 29th, and the first allowable contest will be April 15th. Lastly, Ms. Shay's class at Mass Landing School is doing a high school heroes writing project where her students will interview and then write an article on their high school hero and publish a newspaper with the interview articles. So that's something to look out for. Yeah, and that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of great things going on. All right, so we are to the first public comment period of our meeting this evening, and there will be two. Well, I guess sort of three. We'll have our two typical ones, one now, one at the end of our agenda, and then we also have the opportunity for public input on the budget. So if you have thoughts or questions specifically on the budget, then that's a little bit later in the agenda, but if you wanted to share something with the board now, you have that opportunity. I know we have some folks here in person, and I'm not sure if we've got folks online as well. So we just ask that here in person, if you'd like to speak, just to come up to the podium, and if we have more than one, just queue, socially distance, and online, if you could raise your hand. Down towards the bottom right of the chat function is the ability to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you'd like to speak, and we will let individuals in one at a time with the access to speak. And when it's your turn, we just ask that you give us your name, where you live, and limit comments to 3 minutes, just because I'm not sure what kind of turnout we have. So, and we certainly have the full agenda this evening. So, all right, we will start with in person. Carry on.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Myers. I live in Freeport, and I am the mother of 2 RSU 5 students, a Freeport Middle School student and a Freeport High School student. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board members tonight and the superintendent. I really do appreciate the time that you're taking to listen. And I apologize in advance, but I'm going to read from my notes. While we've all felt stress and responsibility of keeping our families safe, you, board members and superintendent, have had the additional burden of protecting the health and well-being of the RSU 5 student body and its employees. I cannot imagine that pressure, and I thank you for your time and dedication on that. I've been a nurse practitioner in this community for 21 years. I have a master's in public health, and for the last 12 months, I've worked in the community with 2 major employers taking care of their patients in a COVID support program. The program oversees approximately 10,000 employees across the country. We serve as medical consultants for COVID-related policies and decisions around working from home versus being in the office, COVID screening, testing, and on a case-by-case basis, who should be at work each day and who should stay home. Every day, I read the CDC updates, OSHA, and WHO. I understand the complexities that surround COVID-related decision-making. I understand them well. I deal with them every day. I'm here today because I'm very concerned about the recent decision to return to full capacity in-person learning. I'm concerned about how this decision was made, how it was communicated, and the timeline. One of the most important parts of implementing change is eliciting feedback. It allows everyone's voice to be heard, not just the loud voices that call you on a weekly basis, or the ones that pummel you with emails and their opinions. I imagine that although the volume of calls and emails you've received over the last year is overwhelming, it came from a relatively small proportion of the overall community of students, teachers, and parents at RSU 5, not because of the rest of us didn't care or didn't have strong opinions, but because most of us understand that unless we have a specific issue that needs your attention, it's important for us to give you the time and the space that you need to collect the relevant information and process your options. As a parent who's never felt the need to reach out to the school board, I trusted that the administration and or the school board would reach out to its students, parents, and staff as part of this decision-making process. Not only because the decision affects the health and safety of our children, but also because the process of being asked and the opportunity to share your response is such an important part of the mental preparation for change. I firmly believe that the argument that the students want to go back or the students don't want to go back holds no value unless it comes from the students themselves. As far as I know, no one asked the teachers or parents. I struggle to understand that. Maybe you'll say, everyone has an opinion. How could we possibly ask everybody? We would never reach consensus if we were trying to agree. And I would say to that, that doesn't mean that you don't ask. It doesn't mean that you don't take the time to listen to your community that you are here to represent. I first heard about the middle school program going green from my middle school daughter, who heard varying accounts from different teachers and friends. This went on for 2 full weeks. Eventually, she told me that a final decision had been made. About a week later, I received an email from the principal with the first notification to parents that the school planned to go green before the end of March. I had a very similar experience with my high school daughter, only on an accelerated basis. Over the course of 2 to 3 days, she had heard from varying teachers different stories. We were going green immediately. We weren't going to go green. It might happen, it might not. This was extraordinarily stressful for her. She's a planner. She does not do well with uncertainty. And as an aside, if anyone here is thinking the teachers should never have put the children in this position, I would say that it was the administration's responsibility to communicate the plan to students and parents. It was not the teacher's fault. The way this information dribbled into the community of students, parents, and staff elicited confusion and anxiety unnecessarily. At a time when so many changes have happened abruptly and outside of our control, it seems counterintuitive for our school system, which is supposed to be a source of stability, sometimes the only or primary source of stability for children, to announce this abrupt and jarring change without input or timely notification. It's my understanding that the decision to bring back kids has already been made, and I find that disappointing. There were other options that we could have considered and discussed. I also understand that the timeline has been set for the high school to open on the 5th. I want to ask you to pause and ask yourselves, why now? We are so close. In the context of a year-long pandemic, we are a mere weeks away from teachers and staff members having the opportunity to be fully vaccinated. We have sacrificed so much. Why would we risk damaging the response system that we carefully and strategically created over the past 12 months, only to throw that away at the 11th hour? It is unfathomable to me why we would fully reopen our schools on March 23rd and April 5th when we are 3 weeks away from having our staff fully vaccinated. The benefit of waiting just a few weeks, a matter of 19 days if we use the 26th of April, as was at one point considered, extends beyond the issue of vaccination alone. It would provide our students time to adjust to the concept of being in school 5 days a week, and yet again, a change in their schedule. After being put through the ringer of life-altering changes out of the blue, scary, don't we as adults owe them the advance notice? And in addition, parents would be given the opportunity to figure out the scheduling and transportation logistics. That process takes time. You guys have had months to think about this. We have not. I understand that the horse is out of the barn. The decision has been made for the high school to go green, and the middle school has already gone green. I know that the emails have already gone out. However, it is not too late to listen to your students, parents, and staff. I'm not asking you to reverse course. I am asking you to take a breath and consider this. Number 1, survey your students, your parents, and your staff. Make it easy. Do a survey monkey. You don't have to, doesn't have to be free text. Have a multiple choice. Number 2, offer virtual one-on-one meetings for students with their guidance counselors if they have individual concerns about going green. I guarantee you have students that are having really high anxiety and they need to speak to somebody. Number 3, communicate clearly and in a timely manner to parents, staff, and students to prevent the rumor mill from being the way in which we all heard about this. Number 4, postpone going green at the high school until the 26th, at which point your staff will have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated. In doing so, we will feel heard, respected, and as safe as possible given the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just give a quick second for folks on the Zoom. If you would like to speak during the public comment, we just ask that you use your raise hand function and we can admit you in to speak. Oh, we got one. Okay. Nancy Drolet. Is she in?
Yep, I'm in.
Perfect.
Hi,
Hey,
how are you?
Nancy.
Hi, my name is Nancy Drolet. I'm a resident of Freeport. I am a teacher at Freeport High School. I am also the union president. I just heard from our last individual, they would like to know if a survey was done. Yes, a survey was done of teachers, and just to let the public know, 70% of our teachers feel the 26th or later would be the best starting point for our students at this point in time. But what I really wanted to do today was to give you my day, how it started. I typically am here at 7:40. I came in to the FPAC. Upon entering the FPAC, I went over to a student and said, please put your mask back on. This student had had that mask off for about 20 seconds because I'd noticed her from the parking lot all the way through. I put my gear down, went over to the cafeteria. The cafeteria was full with kids. It's great. They were chatting shoulder to shoulder with each other, shoulder to shoulder. I went over to 3 young individuals. One was eating with her mask down. Her 2 friends were next to her, shoulder to shoulder, about 8 inches away from her face. I went over to those 3 and said, hey guys, I need you to be 6 feet away. I then looked up and there were other individuals in there with their masks down. I took my PE voice and said, hey guys, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I mean, we have all of you guys here. You need to have your masks up and you need to be separating. This is the kind of things that goes on every day. I thought that was the end of my day. I don't need to worry about this because in my gym, I'm pretty tight. I'm in class. I look in the stairwell. I see 2 students running up the stairway, no mask on. I go over and say, hey guys, oh, I was running to the bathroom, right, with your sandwich in your hand. I said, mask up, guys. This is what's going on at the high school. I mean, the administration knows I've spoken to them about this. This is an everyday occurrence. It's exhausting. It's exhausting for my teachers. It's exhausting for the staff. It's exhausting for me. I would just like you to hear us. I at least have I am not fully vaccinated. I received my 2nd shot yesterday. I came into school today tired, maybe a little cranky at times, my kids might say, but we're short of teachers. I came in to support our staff and support our kids. I am asking, as the union president, as a resident of Freeport, as a teacher, that we wait until the 26th. At least we will all be fully vaccinated at that time. And again, I really think the administration is doing their best, but I do not think at this point in time this is a wise decision to be made. So thank you for your time, and I just needed to give you a snapshot into my day, and this is a typical day for me. What I do, and I allow the administration to know that I am supporting them. But I think we are moving too quickly in the direction of going green, and this is just with half a cohort group right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Phil DeRusso.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, can you hear me? Am I muted?
No,
Okay,
we can hear
sorry.
you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll just share a note I sent you earlier just to put it out there for everyone. And I can certainly appreciate the comments just made by the 2 people before me. Certainly COVID and what it's done has been a much heated and, a very political let's just say, for lack of better words, kind of a challenge for all of us to deal with. And yeah, I just want to say, on behalf of my family, I just want to thank you for working so hard to find a way to get our children back into school 5 days a week. I'm a parent of 4 children in our district, and we kind of set the tone early on by being the first 4 to actually get infected with COVID. And we kind of put you guys to the test, and you handled it unbelievably well. And super supportive of my family, and it all turned out well for everybody in the end. I can't imagine having to balance the demands of the CDC requirements and provide in-person instruction. It's no small feat at all. It's difficult to make sense of all the noise spread through various media platforms and social media. It's created a false sense of security for some, instilled great fear in others. The reality is that data shows that children can safely go back to school 5 days a week by following the guidance set forth by the US CDC. That's a fact. To justify this decision even more, rich strides have been made to get the teachers and other school personnel across the state of Maine vaccinated against the virus. There's still some that need to get their second dose. There's some things that they're still working out. And, I heard loud and clear from the 2 people before me, one in the medical profession, that, things aren't perfect just yet, but they're moving in the right direction. Lastly, though, the protocols put in place by the RSU have done a tremendous job at protecting everybody. What I love most about what has happened this year is leadership and staff have adopted a can-do attitude. They've adopted the mindset of, let's make the best of what we can do and adapt along the way. This lesson alone teaches our children how to deal with adversity, overcome our fears, and how to work together among many other lessons. I assume the teachers union, some staff, some parents, some students for that matter, disagree with this decision. I challenge them to bring objective evidence to the table justifying their rationale for not wanting to go back 5 days a week. Simply saying I feel unsafe, the children don't want to, and this is going to make my job harder, are not objective arguments, to be quite frank. I've seen feedback firsthand that is anecdotal, opinion-based, and focused on individual interests of those opposed to going back 5 days. I challenge them to look at the hard facts. Are people testing positive for COVID? Yes. How many times has a child tested positive, attended school, and transmitted the virus to another student or teacher? This occurrence is super rare, and I would venture to say has not happened in RSU 5. I could be wrong. Let's look at the flip side of this. Our children are struggling socially. Our children are struggling academically, and I will emphasize, through no one's fault. The mental health of our children is suffering. I can go on and on, but you all know the data and information about this way better than I do. Is the plan put out by the schools perfect? In some people's minds, maybe not. However, let's put what we have in place and do what we have done all year. Adapt and improve. If we keep waiting for the perfect plan, we will be waiting forever because someone inevitably will poke holes in it and we will never move forward. The reality is we will never have the perfect plan. And if dealing with COVID-19 has taught us anything, even the experts are figuring it out as we go. I stand by and fully support the board and RSU 5 leadership's decision to have our children go back to school 5 days a week as the plan is outlined now. I just want to say thank you for all you guys are doing to making our children's experience awesome this year. You've done a great job, and I stand by your decision 100%. So thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Kate Smith.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I would just like to introduce myself. I'm a parent of 2 high school students at FHS. I'm also a family nurse practitioner at Martins Point Healthcare. So I've been working on the front lines of this pandemic since its very inception with no breaks there whatsoever. And I'm also a teacher. I used to be a high school teacher before my changing careers, and I continue to teach online at the college level. So I think I bring a couple different perspectives to this, and I agree with the two people who spoke before Phil that I believe this is a very premature decision. And I was also disheartened to kind of hear about this after, the decision apparently was already made, because I do think there are a lot of voices who have legitimate concerns about returning to full-time at this point. I wrote a detailed letter to the board earlier this week outlining some of my concerns, but I just wanted to address quickly one thing that Philip said right before I'm speaking now, and where he was asking for some figures. And I just want to point out that in our own RSU 5 district, there's been 29 weeks since the start of school and a total of 40 COVID cases. I also want to point out that I was at work today, and so this doesn't include, I saw there's yet another staff member infected at FHS today, so these figures don't include that, but 29 weeks since the start of school and 40 COVID cases. After 27 weeks, there were 35 cases, an average of 1.3 per week. The past 2 weeks has been an average of 2.5 per week. And that doesn't include the one that just occurred. I bring this up because it's not just fear, this is evidence-based. And yes, the school and the district have done a great job. I think somebody needs to be muted. I feel like I'm being cut off a little bit.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. So there is figures that support this. Yes, the CDC has guidelines, but as Nancy pointed out so eloquently, there's guidelines and then there's reality. I can see, having been a teacher, the difficulties in trying to police just half the students being there, never mind all of them. And is it fair to ask our overworked staff and faculty to add policing a full student population when they're having difficulties with half? Never mind, having been a high school teacher, all the planning that goes in ahead of time. I think a lot of times parents don't fully appreciate how much work teachers put into the schedules before it happens, and then to have this completely uprooted, and now they need to shuffle and juggle the schedules all over again, how they're going to be teaching, what they're going to be teaching. Yes, we're trying to get people vaccinated as quickly as possible. I can tell you this from my work at Martins Point, we are working hard to get people vaccinated. We are very far from herd immunity at this point. We all want our kids to go back to school. We all want the children to be back where they belong. We want our staff to be safe. If we do this prematurely, I think we will ruin our chances of doing a successful job in returning in the fall. I agree with the people who spoke before me that why don't we just finish up this year with the plan that has kept our children and our staff safe for the most part until we can get our population more vaccinated, until herd immunity has a chance to be accomplished, and then start fresh in the fall. Hopefully we can get a hold of this virus, but I promise you, having worked on the front lines since March 2020, this is not fear-based, this is reality. And as we have vaccinated our older population, patient cases are rising among the young. Are they as deadly as the older populations? Not usually, no. However, I have seen long-term consequences of young people who have gotten COVID and still are having difficulty. These are young athletes who can't run as well as they used to because they simply can't breathe. There are potential complications. Do you want to risk your children on a small probability that they'll be okay? Or do we want to give the best chance for a successful return in the fall? I don't understand why this is being rushed. And this is based on science. This isn't just based on fear. This is the best way to get back to normal in a safe way, in my opinion. And I think it's really important to protect our staff and our teachers who have worked so hard this year to get everybody back to normal as soon as possible. They deserve to be fully vaccinated before we push them to do more than they already do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Oh, we didn't hear, she said FMS, right? Or FHS. Does anybody know if FHS? Do we know what town she's from? Because we put that in the Freeport. Okay, thank you. Carrie.
Hey, this is actually, I'm here, Joe Less with Carrie Less. She's my mom, and we'd both like to speak to this a little bit. Is that all right?
Sure, just let us know your name as well.
All right, so I'm Joe Less, and I'm a senior at Freeport this year, and I just like to kind of give a quick perspective from my perspective as a senior this year. So my experience this year so far has been the plan that we're using right now has actually been working pretty well for me and a lot of my peers. Actually, obviously it's not ideal. Like senior year, I'd like to be at school with all my friends and everything, but I feel like I've kind of, me and all my teachers as well, have kind of finally gotten in the groove of the whole every other day thing. And so I have a few reasons why I was initially opposed to going back fully, and why I would be in favor now of postponing it until the 26th. So the first thing that I wasn't a fan of about going back is, since I knew we wouldn't be going every day, I would have a lot more time for a senior project. So I scheduled a pretty solid senior project around not going back. And now that we are going back, I'm gonna have a lot less time to do that. I've also already submitted my project proposal, so now I have to redo the scheduling for all that. But basically, I guess I'm a little bit of a special case because I have an AP class, honors AP bio, that goes all through the month of May. And when I scheduled it, I thought I'd only have to go to bio a total of 4 times in person. Now I have to go into school every single day. So that's gonna be tough for my senior project. My other is kind of overall concern with the whole thing. A lot of people have also already mentioned the concerns with just safety. I think it's going to be tough to maintain spacing in some of my bigger classes, and like some other people have expressed, it's just going to kind of be generally difficult. And the other things I've just been kind of thinking is, I think this might have been a better thing to do. Maybe if it was if we could have done it earlier, like January or something. But the fact that it's being kind of tacked on so far at the end of the year is something that I think is going to be hard to adjust to and doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, especially with the fact that the school day ends at 1:15 now, I think, or will. Classes will all be at different times. That'll be definitely kind of an adjustment. Teachers are going to have to make a lot of changes for that. So yeah, I think at the very least, I think it would be a really good idea to postpone it to later, to give everybody a bit more time to prepare. And overall, I think I share a lot of my peers feel the same way too about this, I should add. I remember in one of my classes, one of our teachers just kind of did an informal poll at the start of our class and asked everybody out of, I think there are about 20 people in that class, and everybody kind of gave different reasons for why they would rather not go back fully. I think there were only a couple people who were in favor of the plan. And I agree that it will be great to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time. But overall, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to tack this on at the end of the year just to prepare for it. It'll be tough safety-wise, and I think it'll mess up a lot of people's senior projects. And now, Mom, you want to speak a little bit?
Oh, sure. I guess first I'd like to thank the board and the teachers for what's been a really, really challenging year. And I'll just keep it short. I feel like switching at this time would be disruptive to the students and teachers' schedules. I think there's been, and I think we've kind of adapted to this. And I think I understand the CDC guidelines, but I do feel like it's premature. And so I just wanted to state my position on this, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. I think it was Carrie. Pownell. Okay, thank you. We're just checking to make sure we got everybody squared away on Zoom. No more? Okay, so just a quick reminder, like I always do at this point, if we have folks that would like to speak, we do have another public comment at the end of our agenda. If you can hang in there till the end, you'll have another opportunity to speak at that point. But we're still good? All right, so then we will carry on with the agenda at this point. So we will move on to a report from the superintendent.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with staff resignations. Our first one is Angela Sklar, the Freeport Middle School nurse. Nate Walrath, he's an ed tech at Freeport Middle School. Diane Atwood, adult ed learning lab instructor. Devin Koenig, DCS language arts teacher. And Megan Bigelow, ed tech at Freeport High School. And now I'm going to move to the COVID update. I'm passing out a chart to the board to see. I thought this might be helpful. I haven't done this before, but it really does show you all of the cases by month. In RSU 5, we are now at 28 confirmed and 3 probable, for a total of 31 of our students having tested positive for COVID since September. With the 10 staff members testing positive, we are at 41 total positive cases in RSU 5. We have had 5 new positive cases in students in the past 14 days. Today we had a staff member at Freeport High School test positive. That letter was just sent, I think, probably within the last hour. Our internet was down this afternoon, so we had a glitch with that, and I think that's part of what happened even getting online tonight, so I apologize for that delay. Since my last superintendent's report to you, Freeport has moved to 246 cases, Durham has moved to 111 cases. Pownell remains between 20 and 49, and South Freeport remains between 6 and 19. We currently have all of our pre-K to 5 students back to full days of in-person learning, and all of our Freeport Middle School students back. We hope to have our DCS students back next week. Because of a COVID case there, we had to delay them coming back. We had hoped that they would be back yesterday. Erica Pimrod, a epidemiologist from the CDC, will be here on April 14th for a question-answer period with you and to hear your thoughts about possibly reducing the physical distancing guidelines for September. Now moving on to my equity update. The Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium did a great job of facilitating the equity work that we had on March 12th. We've had a lot of positive feedback from staff. Follow-up conversations are taking place within departments and within all of our schools. We have also scheduled now an equity workshop for the board at the May 12th board meeting that will be facilitated by the same person who facilitated the work with the staff. Discussions around our book study, How to Be an Anti-Racist, continue at our monthly administrative team meetings. We also received this week the curriculum tool from the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium. Although it's a good checklist, Cynthia and I have looked it over, and we do not believe it's comprehensive enough for the review of our curriculum. So she will be reaching out to the state, the DOE, to pursue a more comprehensive approach to our social studies curriculum. And lastly, the DEI committee sent out a letter in the past week of support to our Asian American and Pacific Islanders in response to the killings in Georgia. I also have a brief update about our enrollment study. I have received the draft analysis of the study from NASDAQ. I have tentatively scheduled a discussion for April 28th to review it with the board. And I hope to have a representative from NASDAQ to attend that board meeting on April 28th to also kind of explain how they came up with the numbers that they did. And then good news to finish out my report tonight. 6 of our students swept the 2021 Donate Life Design Art Competition. This annual competition educates students about the organ donation question on their driver's license application. Hundreds of other students from around the state submitted work, but it was our students who took, I think, most of the prizes home. First place went to Emma Berry, who's grade 12 at Freeport High School. Second place was Caitlin Sawicki. I might be killing that name. At third place was Ansley Decker, grade 12. And then 3 of our students also received honorable mention: Macy Johnson, Sydney Morrison, Mariah Sawyer. And we hope to recognize them in a future board meeting, and I would love to be able to portray their art. That was too bad we didn't do that tonight, because they really, it's just very, very impressive. And that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
Maddie.
Thank you, Becky. I wanted to just have two quick things. I wanted to really thank the DEI committee for their work on the statement that was put out. As a member of the community and a parent, I'm very appreciative of that, because I think it conveys a message that we value a safe space for all of our students. So thank you very much for your leadership on that. And I wanted to ask, with regard to the curriculum review, I sent something by email a few weeks ago. I don't remember if it was an article or what, but there's this national effort going on, I think it was through Harvard, to look at civics education and social studies history curriculum. And I would love for us to take this opportunity to ensure that we're looking at that at the same time, because if that's going to be coming down the pike in 5 or 10 years, wouldn't it be great if we got a head start on that?
Thank you for that, Maddie. And because I don't have a subscription to that paper, I haven't been able to open it, but maybe you can like run it off for me or something. I will reassure the board that when we review the social studies curriculum, it will be a comprehensive review. And we follow the social studies learning results were just updated, I think, 2 years ago. 3? What? 2019. Yes, 2. Okay, and those learning results, they have the civics and government, geography, so that will all be done at once.
You may have been dating yourself as a teacher when you said, "Can you run off that article?"
Well, whatever.
I think
okay.
Teachers are the only ones who use that phrase.
Oh, God. Well, however you can get it to me. It would be much appreciated.
Sorry. All right. Any other comments or questions on that part? Okay, so we are now up to public input on the FY22 budget. Ginny pointed out to me that she told everybody last time that last week was their last opportunity. But I said, well, I told them all at the meeting last week that they could call this week and tell us if they had questions or comments. So she was kind enough to add it back into this evening's agenda. I don't know if we'll have anybody take us up on it, but hands are not flying up on the Zoom. Look at that. We just saved 30 minutes on the agenda. Yeah, we're just buying back time we already spent, I know. Okay, so then we will move on with administrator reports. Finance, Rick.
Good evening, everyone. I continue to be very optimistic about our expenditures and expenditure rates for the current fiscal year. I am updating them and looking at them to ensure that the system is telling me the information that I really need to know. And although, it would be a little premature to sort of put a number out there, I feel very, very good that we will end the fiscal year certainly at the same level or greater than we did the previous fiscal year. The finance office spends most of the days of the week behind our doors in training for Infinite Visions. We are thinking about how the management of employees with regard to absence management, time input, and the entire financial system, how they integrate together. We believe that we will be able to at least use only two of the 3 systems that we currently have, resulting, I believe, in better integration for at least a portion of the employee management that we currently have. The work on the FY22 budget, Becky's going to give you an update later on in the meeting, but we have already started to reach out to the town offices and engaging the town clerks, because this is their Super Bowl as well. On June the 8th, their referendum is one of the big events in the municipal calendar, and so we want to be partners with them to make sure that our portion of that particular event goes well also. So unless you have any questions, that concludes my presentation.
Questions for Rick? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I see a hand. Jen tells me we have a hand up now, but for public input, the opportunities, there's still one more. So I'll just ask if you could hold your question until our next public comment. And we promise we will get to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to begin with some thoughts about our plan to bring our students back on April 5th. And then I'm going to have Erin Dow, our Director of Nutrition, talk about how we plan on keeping the kids well fed. And then Jen will also talk about the logistics before we open it up to questions for all of you. We are very excited and eager to bring all of our students back on April 5th. And I do want to start by thanking the board, the staff, administration, students, and parents for all of their hard work and support during this time. Although it has not been perfect, I am proud of what we have been able to accomplish together this year. It's been quite a year, sometimes scary, sometimes disappointing, sometimes very exciting. Just this week, we were disappointed when we had to postpone our return to 5 days a week learning with middle schoolers at DCS because of one case that required all of our 7-8 students to switch from hybrid to remote learning. Equally exciting, yesterday, all of our FMS students switched from hybrid to 5-day-a-week learning. Principal Grogan reported that it went very well. After winter break, while we were in hybrid, due to cases, we had to pivot to remote learning at FHS due to a lack of subs and positive COVID cases. Staying in a hybrid model does not bring with it any guarantee. Even our remote learners have contracted COVID this year. There are no guarantees in a pandemic. We created 3 solid plans last summer so that we could pivot between remote, hybrid, and 5-day-a-week in-person learning when needed. And you voted to entrust in me the ability to decide when it was appropriate to move from one to the other, because we knew that we would be moving in and out these 3 scenarios all year long, which has happened. Since September, we began bringing more and more kids back. That goal has never changed. We now have all pre-K to 5 students and FMS back 5 days a week. And hopefully next week, our DCS students will all be back. And we hope that on April 5th, our high school students will be able to return. We didn't know a lot when all this began. It was hard, it continues to be hard, but we know a lot more now. We know that children are not the major drivers of the spread. I think you can see that in the chart that I gave you, that our cases with kids are lower than it is with staff. We know that schools are not the primary cause for community transmission. We know that Maine continues to have one of the best positivity rates in the nation. We know that 27% of our Mainers have received their first vaccine and 16% are fully vaccinated. We know that the CDC at both the federal and state level continue to reiterate that teachers do not need to be vaccinated before returning kids to school. We know that we must look to the science and the epidemiologists about the safety of returning to school. They tell us it's safe. We know how to implement the DOE guidelines for being in school safely. This does not mean that it's not scary. There is no playbook for all of this. Big companies, dental offices are all grappling with some staff not wanting to return to work full time. This is not just about RSU 5. It's in every school district in the state and throughout the United States. Why is it so important to get back to 5 days a week at Freeport High School? Why are we rushing it, as some people say? I don't feel like we're rushing it because this is something that we've been working towards since last summer. This is the only way to ensure equitable learning for all. Some of our kids, as you've heard tonight, and teachers are saying that the hybrid's working. Well, I'm thrilled that it's working for some of our kids. Many of our kids have great executive functioning skills, quiet study spaces at home, flexibility with parental support, and the resources to fill the gaps. I could not be happier for those students that are so fortunate. But this is a gift that many of our other students do not have. We have almost 1 in 4 students who are economically disadvantaged in RSU 5. We have others who are struggling with mental health challenges. Others are struggling just from a lack of routine. Hybrid is not working for them. We have already had some of our students drop out. They have given up, despite the many interventions that we have tried to offer. Currently, some of our students are only having class with their teacher once a week, depending on their schedule. This is not good. We slowed down requiring more synchronous learning at FHS because of the challenges you heard about. Our teachers have done an incredible job with the classes they are teaching synchronously, but we are still a long ways off from being fully synchronous. Many of our high school students are not showing up on their remote day. Truancy on remote days is a big problem that we have not been able to solve. This challenge will be eliminated with the return to 5-day-a-week person learning. Currently, today, 35% of our high schoolers are failing a class. 18% of our students are failing 2 or more classes. We need them back 5 days a week to best support them. Postponing the return requires unnecessary sacrifices of many of our students and families. The less fortunate do not have the ability to weather the storm in the same manner as those with more. Why would we leave those who are struggling out in the storm for more than 1 second than is necessary? Maybe a few weeks does not seem like a long time for those of us who are doing okay, but for the families that are struggling, it's huge. Is the return to 5 days a week a risk? Risk can never be entirely eliminated while COVID exists. Going hybrid was a risk in September, but 97.5% of our staff have remained COVID-free. 98.5% of our students have remained COVID-free. We have no current evidence of in-school transmission. Remember the stress level last summer of the thought of returning to school from remote learning? It was huge, but we did it. And we did it well, and we did it safely. And that was due to the efforts of all of us. We know that our kids are going to the mall, socializing with friends, eating in restaurants, playing sports, doing extracurricular activities. The one thing that our high school students cannot currently do is attend 5 days a week, which is where they probably are the safest. Our families have been extremely patient with us since March 16, 2020, when we went to remote learning. We cannot ask our families to continue to wait for 1 second longer than is needed to return to full-time learning. Working towards equity for all is not just about writing words in a mission statement. It's about living those words and taking action. Returning to 5-day-a-week learning is one small action step in creating equal opportunities for all RSU 5 students and in fulfilling our mission. We look forward to April 5th and welcoming all our students back to school full-time. And now I'll ask Erin Dow to come and talk to us about how we're going to ensure that our kids are fed throughout the day, because we know this is huge, especially with teenagers.
Yes. Nutrition has definitely emerged as one of the primary concerns about this return to school on April 5th at the high school. And so I feel fortunate to know that this community cares that much about student nutrition, and I'm here to tell you about what we're going to do to make sure that they eat throughout the day. So there are no changes to the breakfast program at all. Same food, same procedure, same time. And along with regular breakfast, a la carte items and snacks and fruits and beverages will continue to be available starting at 7:15 and throughout the day. The kitchen will be open from breakfast at 7:15 until after the proposed school bus departure time. We'll be starting lunch service immediately after breakfast ends, which is earlier than we normally do, possibly even with some overlap so that we can make sure there's no interruption there with students' ability to receive food. There's no change to the type of food that we're serving, except for the serving format changes to facilitate quicker service and to maintain food quality over a longer period of time. We're going to allow and even encourage students to eat during study halls here in the cafeteria, guided study halls and advisory study halls. In addition, kids can snack on their school meals or their snacks when they're outdoors switching classes, during mask breaks, etc. Bagged lunches is an element of our plan only in that if and when a student needs a meal, any time between the time the kitchen opens at 7:15 and the time that the buses leave, and they can't eat it in the assigned areas, we're going to put it into a bag and they can take it with them to eat at their convenience. We'll have increased seating in here during study halls, so the kids will be able to remain 6 feet apart and maintain that distancing. We're going to have a supervised lunch from 1:15 to 1:45, so any kids that didn't manage to eat throughout the day can eat then. And so all in all, as this plan has kind of evolved, it's definitely not traditional. It's not what we're used to doing, but that seems to be the theme of the year. And I believe that what we've come up with doesn't limit the access to the meals program at all. If anything, it may enhance it. I'm actually anxious to see what happens with it. And students may need to plan a little more. If they don't have a study hall, they may need to come in a little earlier and grab something, maybe grab a grab-and-go lunch that they can take with them and snack on throughout the day. And I would say also that parents might want to remind their students that, when they get on the bus, that it's difficult to maintain 6 feet distancing and keep their friends and our bus drivers safe while they're eating. So we should be planning on that as well. But I think we've got plenty of time throughout the school day for anyone who wants to eat to be able to do so. And I have a staff willing to make sure that if any other remedies need to be put into place, that we'll do that.
Okay, we'll have Principal Gulcote speak, and then if you have questions for either Aaron or Jen, or even me, we're happy to take your questions.
Good evening, Jen Gulco, high school principal. So I'd just like to start by saying that in the past week, since I spoke to the board last Wednesday, we have had many discussions about returning to school 5 days. We met with every teacher, both in a team setting and individually, to talk about their classrooms, to talk about their specific rosters, but really also just to listen to their feedback, their questions, their concerns, their brainstorming ideas. And we remain steadfast in our belief that this is the right thing to do, to bring our students back to school full time. We let our teachers know that we are listening to them and we are trying to address their concerns. Anything from, we went through all of the CDC guidelines and how that applies to their classrooms and if and how they would be able to follow those guidelines or where they were concerned. I absolutely know that there will be challenges to this, as there have been this entire year. And I think that we can do this safely. And I think that we have an amazing staff who has been so resilient. And I think that they will pull together and make sure that this happens safely for our students. I also do want to say that students are going to, I emailed the students with the details yesterday. I wanted to share those with staff and go through all of those with staff before they were shared with students and families. And so the students will have a chance on Friday during advisory to meet with me in an optional meeting, either virtually, so that they can ask their questions. I think always, Mr. Mellon and I want to make sure that students feel heard. But there are many times where we make decisions that students don't always fully agree with us. And we want to make sure that they have their voices heard, though it doesn't always mean that we are going to agree on the final outcome. I spoke with Dr. Foley with the example of when I was first here, and we shifted from one giant lunch in this school to 2 lunches. That was a controversial issue that no one actually really remembers even happened. And I felt like the number one thing was it was about safety, and it was the right thing to do. And I was listening to students and their concerns, and they were vehemently against going to 2 lunches. And we talked through it, went through it, and we made the decision that we thought was in the students' best interest. And so I hope that some students I've talked to individually, students have been emailing me, talking with me in the hallway. We did not survey our students, but hopefully on Friday they feel that they have a chance to be heard. So I'd like to go through some of these logistics that you have in front of you. I won't go through all of them, but hopefully some of these details will answer some of the questions that you have. You see that we have an abbreviated schedule. We do lose some class time. We're down to 65 minutes instead of 75 minutes. And we feel that students being here every day is worth that time loss. Erin spoke about our details about lunch and nutrition, but also that afternoon prep time for teachers allows for multiple things. It guarantees that those teachers have that reserved prep time. Many of them have asked, can they meet with students at that time, which of course is always optional. But it also sets us up that they have prep time during the day and then again after the students leave. And what that means is that we will be in a better place than we have been all year for coverages for any reason. If someone needs to be out of the building, that there's time that teachers can now help during the day, where before we were kind of asking and pleading, and our teachers are phenomenal about volunteering their time. But this ensures that even if they help, they still have prep time above and beyond what we have guaranteed in the educator agreement in the contract for them. So then moving to classroom spaces, as I shared last week, we have different size classrooms all over this building. Anybody who was on the building committee knows that from the blueprints. And we measured every room to determine the capacity. We don't have a set number because the sizes of the rooms are so different. Each teacher had the option of 3 things. One was to keep students in their own classroom if they could maintain 3 feet. The other option was moving to a larger classroom because we can flip-flop people, and there are many of our classrooms that are empty at the time that teachers have prep time, or that they could send students to an overflow area. We were planning on dedicating the AFPAC lobby to that, so they would decide that some students would go to the overflow, and then they would teach synchronously, and kids would rotate who went to that overflow area. No teacher has chosen that option so far. We have been able to either figure out how a teacher will stay in their room. I counted yesterday, we were up to 8 different sizes of tables. So swapping out and 2 sizes of desks. So swapping out furniture, moving out things that aren't needed, created space. But then we also were able to have some larger classrooms where teachers are willing to move to that classroom, either for 1 or more periods. And then some of this I spoke about last week, the ventilation, keeping the windows open, keeping the air filters on, and then setting up our outdoor classrooms, which Brady Grogan made a great point last week that we have so many teachers that are no longer going to have any synchronous classes, that their opportunity to go outside will be significantly increased because they won't be tied to the laptops for the students who are at home. In the passing periods, I shared with the board, if you can remember way back in the fall, that normally this building is incredibly tight on security and locked doors. We made the choice to put the risk of COVID above the risk of keeping the doors open. And so students have been passing outside all year. The weather impeded that a little bit, but they still did an outstanding job of changing classes outside. Our custodians made sure that pathways were clear, and they'll continue to do that. And then if you've visited the school, you see that we limit the number of students who are allowed in a bathroom. We have one of the busiest hallways is only one way, At the beginning of the year, we had the stairwells that were one way as well. We came to the decision that that wasn't needed. They weren't busy enough. And so but that is something that we could consider because we started with that at the beginning of the year. And you'll see in the chart that I shared on a separate page about our overall class sizes. So this shows you that in the space of 2 days, on a maroon day and a white day, we have 253 total classes that meet. And out of those 253 classes, 198 of them, 78% of our classes, are already under at 16 students or below. And then we have 109 classes, 43% of our classes are at 12 students or below. So that just gives you a sense of where our size class falls in terms of the physical space of classrooms. Some of these details about arrival and dismissal, these are not changes. These are things that we will maintain, that students are able to come and have breakfast in the morning. If they're not eating breakfast, then they are waiting outside. They go straight to class when the bell rings at 7:40. In past years, they have been able to come into the building at all times as soon as somebody's here in the morning, but this is something that we have held fast. So there are no students in any other part of the building before 7:40 in the morning, other than the cafeteria and the FPAC. One pretty significant change is that we will, for this year, offer, for the rest of the year, late arrival and early dismissal for all grades. Our 9th and 10th graders have never had that before. So that means if they have their own transportation and they have a study hall at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, then they will be allowed, if they have grade qualifications, to come in late. So that increases, come in late or leave early. That increases the number of students that will physically be out of the building at the time. If you see the overall class size chart, if you flip that over to the back, that shows you what our numbers will look like for off-campus privileges. So already, the 11th and 12th graders, this is already in place. So that 60 of them have late arrival, 75 have early dismissal, meaning that they can come late, leave early. 95 of our seniors have open campus. That's 95 out of 143. So that's a significant portion of the senior class can leave at any time that they don't have a class scheduled, or during advisory if they don't have a callback. 75% of our juniors have the same, have that same privilege. And then you can see that the numbers are lower for the 9th and 10th graders, but when you add that with the 11th and 12th graders, there's a significant portion of our student population. We're at 603 total students right now that have the ability to be off campus at different times throughout the day. The dismissal bus, the teachers are really happy to hear this, that it will be the first time that we have had a late bus at the high school. That Dennis Olette has done an outstanding job of figuring out that we'll be able to run our full bus route at 1:30 and then the full bus route again at 2:30. And that means that any student that needs to stay for extra support, who doesn't have their own transportation, will be able to stay. They'll eat lunch and then they'll stay here to work with our ed techs or potentially with their teachers if their teachers are available. I think that Erin captured the nutrition piece. I think the thing that's probably the most common question that I had from students, but also those questions came before the students had the details. And so I knew that that was a source of stress because the students didn't know these details until the teachers had seen them. I think we feel very strongly about not letting kids go hungry. We also have snacks in the main office that students know, and in the nurse's office in a typical year where students can come during the day. So there are quite a few students who come and access snacks, eat a granola bar quickly in between classes, and that helps them. But that has been happening. That practice has nothing to do with COVID. We've always done that when we see students who are hungry. Sometimes teenagers don't have the best eating habits along with their sleeping habits. And so if we notice that, then we really try to make sure that we're taking care of that. The capacity of the cafeteria moves to 150 on March 26th with Governor Mills's change in the indoor restrictions. And so our plan is, as I've shared before, the tables that you are sitting at are 6 feet tables. That's why we bought them. And so our students have been excellent about that during the lunch periods and during advisory study hall, they're not allowed to sit anywhere else other than where the chairs are placed. So the chairs are placed at 6 feet, and that's where they stand. There are absolutely times that we have to remind them to move apart from their friends, to put their mask on. I'm not sure if everybody knows that once they're done eating, they need to put their mask right back on. That is a reminder that we work on with them every single day. And I think, among other things, that we have to remind them, which we wish we didn't. You can see our posters here that say they can't have their cell phones out too. These are all the things that I don't want to make light of students not following the guidelines, but teacher input last week during those PLCs, when I asked the question flat out, how are you feeling about the use and the consistency of masks with our students? They said, in general, they thought that the students are doing an excellent job, and that it's typically the same students that have been struggling all year to keep their mask on, keep their mask up. And Charlie and I have offered to the teachers, they need to send us the names, and then we have another conversation, potentially call home, and talk about the importance of keeping their mask on. Another question that we've had is our fully remote students. They are able to stay fully remote. They might have a change to their schedule because the fully remote schedule is incredibly challenging to follow because 2 of our fully remote teachers work both for the middle school and the high school. And so far, the fully remote students have followed a Monday through Friday schedule. They already don't follow our maroon, white, and then whatever Friday happens to be. They don't follow that already. So the change with maroon, white impacts all of our students, including fully remote. And we're working with, some of them have no changes whatsoever. Some of them just have a flip-flop of the time that their class meets. But then some of them will have a new instructor. One of the things that we worked on this week was that we hired 2 substitutes to take on some of the remote students that are in FHS classes so that they can get more attention, and they also would take the synchronous learning out of that class. That has not happened universally for teachers. There's some classes that will still need to be synchronous for our fully remote students. But if we were able to do that, we felt that the students would still receive high quality instruction, and then the teachers would have that burden lifted of relying on the technology and the challenge that has posed this year. And then finally, we are proposing that it would be 2.5 days of planning for our staff. Staff also had today that we had rescheduled a meeting that was planned for after school today so that teachers could just spend the time looking at their furniture and their classrooms and anything else that they wanted to start looking at logistically for planning. Our Region 10 students will remain with their schedule, and we are working with their individual schedules, that some will still be following the schedule that they have of where they have van transportation to or from school, or some of our Region 10 students are already our 5-day students, and so they've already got a schedule that's set here, and we're able to do that. Again, their schedule is quite complicated this year, and so we're working with all of those students to make sure that their schedules are set. We'll continue with advisory, and so the clubs will be able to meet, as I said last week. We're looking at the locations for that. We offer open track instead of open gym this year, and so students are able to go outside. We did that all throughout the fall, and we'll do that again in the spring. And then advisors are able to take students outside, which they have been doing all year. Some of them, that's up to them if they take them out for a mask break or a snack break. And so the last thing that I didn't put on here in terms of logistics is some of the messaging to students. We know that this is a change to their schedules, absolutely. But we also know that in September, we were incredibly tight with our logistics and our reminders and our protocols, and that it has taken some more prompting, things like sanitizing and just reminders. And so our plan is to have messaging that goes out to all of the advisories. We did it last fall in the form of a video of that Charlie and I made. But then another huge benefit is that the capacity of the FPAC goes up to 50%, which would be 250. We won't get anywhere close to that. And so we'll bring one class at a time into the FPAC to have grade level assemblies. And that is normally how we start every school year. And so that will be where we are celebrating them coming back to school, having some fun things that are a part of that assembly, but really, coming and with clarity about how important it is, what the health and safety guidelines are, and the importance of us coming together as a community to enforce them. So I think that will help. And so, again, we know that there will be, the teachers have all seen this plan. They've given feedback and ideas. And so we will continue to do that with the teachers, with all of the staff. And I'm confident that we are going to be able to do this in a way that keeps our community safe.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Becky. I'm sure there are comments or questions from the board. Beth.
Thank you for all that. It was great to have a lot more information, and Becky as well. I guess the thing that I'm just still concerned about is the food and not the ability to provide it to the students, but looking at the schedule, there's only 5 minutes in between classes, and I know just from when my older daughter was here, sometimes it takes you 5 minutes to get where you're going and you've got all your stuff, and I'm really concerned that they're not gonna have the time to eat. So that's just one of my main concerns.
So as Erin explained, the vast majority of our students, and I didn't have this number from Power School, which I can share with the board, of what's the percentage of our students who have a study hall at some point during the day. That is a really high number. We do not have that many students who are packed with 4 periods with no break. Even for the students that do, everyone has advisory available. And so we've, thinking about how do we support our students who are feeling hungry. So our advisory callback system, which we have done, this is the 3rd year, I believe, that we've done the cafeteria study hall. So, and so what happens during advisory is that clubs meet, but then teachers are, as I've explained to the board before, teachers are able to do what we call callbacks. So they would say, I'd like to call Becky Foley back to my room to review a quiz and have a reassessment of that quiz. For the students in my advisory who are not called back, they are able to come down to the cafeteria study hall. That happens every day. And we have quite a few students who prefer to eat lunch at that time. That is the time we have always served lunch during advisory, because that's when Region 10 kids eat every day. And so some students bring their own lunch, some students get lunch from the cafeteria. And so that will be available to everybody. And then when you look at those numbers, there are some days when that huge number of students who have open campus, that 95 number of seniors and the 75, now obviously with the cohort split, the only thing that they are required to do is if they're on campus for period 3-4, they need to stay for the first 10 minutes of advisory, and then they can leave. And so if that was the time that they wanted to eat lunch, then instead of going off campus, I have a sneaky feeling many of them will still choose to go off campus, but they could come down and have lunch. And then again, originally I had proposed that 1:20 was the end of our day, and we shifted it back to 1:15. That gives students 15 minutes to eat before the bus. And on a daily basis, there are quite a few of our students who are done eating within 15 minutes. Some students have said they feel this year, because they can't sit with a huge group of friends, that lunch is too long, that they're eating and then they have to put their mask back on and sit. So I know that 1:15 is late. Right now, our lunch B ends at 1:10. So it starts at 12:40. So half of our students for the last 5 years have eaten lunch at 12:40. So it's later, it is. But I think the accessibility to food, we've never had study halls down here in this cafeteria, and their ability to get food throughout the day and then have that lunch period. But again, we don't want any student to be hungry. And I think that our teachers are incredibly flexible if somebody needed to get lunch during that advisory period.
Vali.
Thank you, Jen. Those details really help flesh out the plan, and I'm hoping that a lot of parents are listening to this meeting so that they understand exactly what are the protocols in place that will keep everyone safe. I have a couple of questions, but I also wanted to make a comment about the survey that went out to the teachers, and the question was, following the survey, you said that you had one-on-one meetings with teachers. And I wanted to know whether you have seen a shift in attitude where they are more comfortable with the plan, because obviously the ideal scenario would be for teachers to buy into the plan, because then that will be a lot easier to implement, and we don't want the teachers not to feel that they're part of the plan and part of making the decision. So I'm hoping that your continued conversations have given some reason for being optimistic about the fact that they may embrace the plan before the 5th?
I can't say how they feel. I can say that I think our staff, like I said, has just shown amazing resiliency. I think that some people still have reservations about the vaccine, about the vaccination. I did share after the last board meeting, and I believe it was Susanna that made a comment about the where you stand after you've had your first shot. And I shared some information with the board from the New England Journal of Medicine about what they are saying for their research about where you stand after you've 7 days after your first shot, 14 days after your first shot. And then, so I've shared some of that information. That in our meetings, so we met with 8 teams over the past 2 days, and then also met with individuals. Some of the individual meetings happened before the survey went out. Some happened afterwards. But the majority of teachers' mindset in the last couple of days was about planning, was about moving furniture, was about doing their lesson planning, because as I shared with the board last week, that there was a contingent of the staff that just said, I just want a date, that they lesson plan out for weeks. And so I shared with them, again, my thinking about why I felt that I had originally proposed April 5th. I shared some of what Dr. Foley said, the same details of I know that the hybrid is working for some students. Fully remote is working for some students, and fully remote is an absolute terrible situation for some of our students. It's been incredibly difficult to try and figure out how to help them, and same with the hybrid system. And so I've shared those details with the teachers. And we have a caring, dedicated staff. And so that was my take on the last few days, is that they have been focused on planning what this could look like. But they had the chance, as I said, to go through that where I was wanted to address following CDC guidelines in their classroom. Every teacher had a chance to talk about masking, sanitizing, health screening, and physical distancing and their setup of their room. So I feel every teacher had the chance to talk to us about that, share their concerns, and then think about the logistics.
Well, that's great, thank you. And I encourage you to continue those conversations. The one comment that really struck me about the survey, obviously there were people who felt one way or the other, but one comment that stood out to me was someone who said, I don't disagree with the decision. I just don't agree that it was well planned. And it makes the work more difficult when people perceive the process as not being as good as it should have been, because it may change the opinion about the decision itself when in reality, they may support the decision. So I encourage you to continue to have those conversations, and I'm super grateful that you're doing so much work and providing so much great data for everyone. And I also checked the vaccines, because there were so many comments about the vaccine on the survey. Both the Pfizer and the Moderna have 90% protection after 14 days of the first dose. The second dose doesn't come until 21 days for Pfizer, 28 days for Moderna. So I'm hoping that everyone is aware that 90% of the protection comes after 14 days. And the second dose is to make sure that strains that may pop up or additional immunity is fully, has time to just fully take hold of the human being. But I'm very comfortable with the plan as it's written, with the one caveat that we may need to be super careful about the students following the protocol. So when I hear Nancy say, I need to keep telling kids, put on your mask, that gives me concern. When I hear someone else saying, they're just sitting there chatting away and eating and they're not following the protocols, that's a concern. And I'm also really concerned about what happens outside of the school. So inside of the school, we can try to make sure that everyone follows the protocols. Otherwise, we likely will see issues with the plan. But if everyone follows it, then I'm confident that we're going to be in really good shape. And I'm super grateful that we're thinking about the kids whose parents don't write to us and don't participate in the meetings, because this is mostly for them and they need the help, and we are here to advocate. So thank you.
Jen.
Thanks, Jen. I just had one question about, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 feet in the classroom between students, and then 6 feet between the instructor and any students, correct? So in the cafeteria, we're talking about 6 feet. Are you maintaining a 6 foot in the cafeteria, or are you going down to 3?
So the reason why we're going to maintain the 6 foot tables is so that students can eat.
Okay.
You know, I mean, one of the things that the guidelines are the tightest about when your mask is off and when you're eating. And so having the tables set up that way might be overly cautious for the kids who have masks on, but I think that it allows everybody to eat in this room who wants to. So we actually have limited the number. If you remember our big round tables, and if you see these signs that say last year pre-COVID, it was 2 students per table, 3 students per table, and that was, you know, for them to have a productive study environment. So I don't think it's going to hurt anybody to stay 6 feet away, and so we'll leave the tables and the chairs that way. We'll just be adding more tables and more chairs into this room so that they can both study and eat.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Thank you.
Can I just confirm that the class listing you gave us, this is assuming that all the kids are back?
Yes.
Okay, this isn't like how it looks today. This is what it looks like once both cohorts are together.
Both cohorts, yes.
Okay, thank you. Susanna.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, John. Really appreciate the further details. And Aaron, especially, I know we heard a lot of concerns about food and nutrition, and I really appreciate how you've gone through a lot of those specific concerns. I'll probably be a little bit all over the place because I've got lots of thoughts and they're also all over the place. I guess overall, I'm really struggling in a few areas with this. And I appreciate that this plan is quite thorough. I'm a little bit frustrated that we didn't see it earlier, especially as Phil noted that the board authorized that this is a decision that we made as a board. And I realized that on the 12th of August, we did say that we are authorizing the superintendent and the administration to jump between these, in the idea that if we need to pivot, we can pivot. This to me doesn't quite seem like a pivot if we've been working towards this all along. And so I have a couple questions. One is, I know we've had a green plan from the beginning. I know I was on that committee last summer. But I want to know what other things are planned, looking at other schools around. I know some schools are going to 75%, or they're bringing one class grade in at a time. So I want to just know sort of what, if we sort of just went with the green plan from the beginning and said that this was the plan, we're just going to find the right time to bring that in. So that's one question. Another is, we're talking about the staff vaccinations, and I did, as you mentioned, note last week that the effective full efficacy of the vaccine is after that 2-week mark, and the second one, as Valley just pointed out, is that booster. But we're talking about staff, we're not talking about students, and students that we're now bringing a lot closer, saying that they can be 3 feet apart. And we know they're getting together outside of school because I see them carpooling. I see them going for jogs right by my house. I see them talk about their April break plans. I'm more concerned about student-to-student transmission and wondering, especially now with the vaccine for students 16 and older in April, just what that relationship is. And, we're focusing on the staff, but not maybe as much on the students in that sense. And then lastly, I guess I want to know about spring break, because I have heard from students that they are planning to go away. I've also heard from faculty in other schools, not Freeport, I will, just to make that clear, that they're having integrity issues with students who say, yes, of course I haven't traveled out of Maine, or I haven't traveled out of these states, when they were in Florida last week. And so just that issue of trust and what we're doing. And we're talking, Nancy Jolie mentioned about having, and you, as you, Jen, mentioned about having to remind students, these are the protocols, we need to follow them. We've dropped that survey, the health survey, every morning, I believe. What are we doing to ensure the integrity that people are here honestly, that they are behaving? And then I guess my last issue I have is that, Jen, you had mentioned that you have steadfast faculty support. And Nancy, I believe, said 70% of the staff aren't in favor of coming back, if I remember that correctly. And I'm a little bit concerned that, yes, we do have some students back 5 days, and have we looked at, either an elective return? We've been bringing students back. Have we looked at sort of an elective return, students that are really struggling? Can we bring more students back without interrupting schedules, without maybe overloading the staff that aren't supportive of this? So those are a bunch of questions, and I apologize for that, but thank you.
So maybe I'll go backwards. So when I said we steadfast, that's Charlie and me.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And so I believe that we have the support of some staff. Some staff are fully on board with April 5th. Some staff, one person said, I would have been in favor of bringing them all back in September. So a range of and some people have said, I don't want them to come back at all. And so I think we have a range. So just to clarify that I feel steadfast in this in this decision with the other administrative team and with Charlie. The spring breaks, so it's kind of tied when you're talking about the green plan, and have we looked at other schools? So I meet with all the Cumberland County principals that are in this voluntary group every Friday. So we have shared details about every element of what we're looking at. And I think there are different situations for different districts. One of the things that other districts decided was that there was 6 feet in classrooms right off the bat. And so that significantly limited their ability. If we had been at that regulation of 6 feet in between students, I don't know that we would be able to do this, because we would have been able to do it for some, probably for those classes of 12 or fewer. And so that had stopped some principals in their tracks from moving forward. The schools that have 3 feet or are working to negotiate 3 feet are in a very different place. And so we've talked about a lot of details.
one of the things that we talked about was we were one of the few districts that was still requiring that health screening every day. I've shared with with Dr. Foley, my own children in Portland. I get a text message every morning on the days that their cohort goes to school to remind me of their health screening. For me, that was super effective because it's just a quick reminder. Right now, we still have the emails that go out every day to staff and to parents. The integrity of how people are doing that, we have to trust in them, and we have since the beginning. There's no reason why they couldn't lie when we had an app on their phone. Our nurse is, we call her the superhero here. She follows up with every single student who calls in sick. She follows up with, I don't know how she does it. I know that some of the high schools around us do not do that. They don't do daily or weekly attendance phone calls, and we have done attendance phone calls since I've been here for 6 years every day. And so when we hear about situations, we address them. We reach out to families and say, this came to our knowledge that this is happening. But we have to trust that our families are trying to do the right thing and keeping our kids in school. I think the same thing goes for social events. What I can do and what we can do as a district and a school is just these constant reminders. I know that I receive that for my kids in Portland as well. And so I think for the spring break plans, the same thing that we've done for the other vacations is that we send reminders what the guidelines are, asking them to reach out. And some families have done an excellent job. They tell us exactly where they're going, when they're coming back, how long they'll have to quarantine. And so my hope is that people will continue to do that. And then the student-to-student contact, right now, our evidence has shown that we do not have students transmitting COVID within school. And so I think that as Dr. Foley said, as long as COVID exists, that there's a risk. But that is not, our evidence has not shown that that's happening in school, where masks are required and the sanitizing and the distancing. And so I think we will have to do a lot of reminding of students. We've done that all year. And I think I heard Nancy say it's exhausting, and I would agree with that, absolutely. But it doesn't mean that we'll stop reminding them to follow those guidelines. And then the green plan, I think your question was, did we have a plan totally set and ready to go that we've been sitting on? We did not. I think that there were parts of this year earlier where Charlie and I have had conversations of, do you think it's possible? I mean, we've been talking about that since probably our first conversation was November. And at first I was unsure that this would ever come about this year. And so we have not had these details. We didn't have these ironed out last week either. So I think, there's more things that have come up as our meetings with teachers have gone over the week. And some things we've been able to implement right away. One of the things that we figured out too, just a simple thing, is that when a student is wearing a mask that is constantly falling down, that we have more masks available all over the school for them. So we say, here's a new mask, because a paper mask does not fall down in the first few minutes that you wear it. And the district has been wonderful that we have so many of these. So a teacher suggested that, and then that afternoon, our office staff made bins that now the masks are all around school where kids can grab them in an individual bag. I'm a little worried about the plastic with the plastic baggies, but we have to make these decisions. And so they're out and readily available. We've had them all year in the office. And at the start of the year, we had them at the entrances, and then realized it's incredibly rare that a student walks into the building without a mask. And when they do, they're usually holding their jacket and they're like, my mask just broke. And they come into the office and get one. But so once a teacher suggested that, then we put them all out. So all of these details are being fleshed out right now.
Thank you very much. I would ask just a little bit of clarification when we're putting out plans, speaking of masks falling down, I appreciate what you said about you and Charlie being the backers of the plan, and you are steadfast because it's coming out that it's from the faculty, it's the staff that's putting this out, or that it's the board. And when we are getting information after it's released or after it's out, it makes that dynamic a little bit challenging. So I appreciate that clarification and just ask that that continues. Thank you.
It's really hard. It's very much like the chicken and the egg type, the chicken and the egg and the something else, right? Because there's the staff and there's the admin and there's the board and there's the parents, and it's really hard to, fully develop a plan. You don't want to release a plan that's not ready for prime time, right? You don't want to send it out without the details that the parents are going to want, but then you're not sure if really that's the direction the board wants you to go. And I mean, I can appreciate the struggle of trying to do that dance of, getting information out there, wanting to get staff input before it goes out to kids, but wanting to make sure that everybody is, at least going in the right direction. So I appreciate, I love information, right? As a parent, I want to know everything as quickly as possible. But I also understand that sometimes that's a difficult feat to accomplish. Yeah.
I just wanted to also answer, I think, one of the questions that you asked, Susanna, that Jen failed to answer, but I think she got more of your questions than I was able to write down. But you asked whether we have looked or are looking about whether it could be optional for some kids coming back that needed to. I think you asked that. And we have, since September, been trying to bring more kids back all over the district. And the high school, we were able to bring, I think we're almost up to like 15%. And Jen and I have had more than one conversation over the last few months about, could we bring them back and then have them like rotate? But the schedule at the high school is so much more complicated than K-8 that we really were not able to figure out a way to do that. So, to say, well, Liam doesn't want to come back, so can he stay on hybrid? But, Lindsay's child does want to come back, and could we be running that simultaneously? And we have not been able to figure that out. And, we have been trying, as I understand that some of the teachers don't realize that, because I'm sure they're not tuning into all of our board meetings or even the parents. But you have heard us say we're trying to think creatively. We're trying to figure this out as soon as possible. And when we have plans figured out, we will be bringing the kids back. And so obviously the high school, for many reasons, was the most complicated. But we did look at that.
And I think I would say two things that I have consistently heard from staff all year. One that I've heard all year, one that has been more recent, is that yellow is the hardest. That they have been saying that since the beginning of the year, that they felt like even how difficult it was not to have kids in the building, fully remote, that the challenges of the yellow plan were just massive. And I've heard that from teachers all across the board, from the technology to, as I shared last week, managing cohort A, cohort B, fully remote, and 5-day kids all in the same class. And a 5-day kid in a non-synchronous class is not a great situation. Sometimes they're hearing the repeated lesson from the day before. Sometimes they're just going to study hall to work on something else. A lot of teachers just went above and beyond and made another lesson plan for that 5-day kid. So that has been an intense burden. And every student that has come back 5 days, I've asked the teachers, can you take this student on for 5 days in your class? Does it make sense for them to be 5 days? And so it's a process for that student to come. It's not that we just have them come back and they're hopping right into class. And the other thing that recently is that teachers, we had set criteria for who was coming back 5 days. Students on an IEP, on a 504, high risk, ELL, and on the dropout prevention list. So that was just some of them. And teachers were begging me for other kids to come. Parents have been begging me, I know you have this criteria, but my student is suffering. And teachers were saying, I know we have this criteria, but I'm seeing this kid suffering. They need to come back. And so those are two really strong pieces of evidence for me to make this decision, and knowing that we've been talking about it, since the summer, of that green would always be on the horizon of how do we get there.
Did you have your hand up, Liam?
Yeah, I mean, I think my question has largely been answered with where the issues are with the 35% that are failing, and asking them to return full-time. But I guess one of the questions, and I think I mentioned this in a letter that I wrote to the board the other day, I had a very large number of students come to me, and I guess I'm kind of wondering, what are you doing / planning to do so that students can actually feel heard? Because that has been one of the biggest concerns, actually. Not even the returning to school full-time. It's been wanting to hear or wanting to be able to give actual input. And I guess I don't see how such a large number of students can and would take the time to meet individually, because it's time-consuming to a certain extent, whereas a survey would take 5 minutes to 10 minutes for a student to fill out. So I guess, yeah, my question really is, what are you doing to listen to students?
So Friday is the day when any student can come to that optional advisory meeting. And so I've asked the students to read over all, that was in an email, to read over all of the logistics, think about questions and comments and concerns that they have, and come to that meeting. And then I think after that meeting, then we'll think about, do we need another one? What's another venue for that? I think often, the survey is helpful, but I think students having the chance to talk in person and to voice their concern has been helpful in thinking about, can I answer some of the questions? Like, a lot of the concern, as I said, that I heard in the first few days was about lunch. Some I've heard about senior projects, which I do understand. And so I think that some of those groups have a specific situation. And then I've had some students, I had one senior stop me in the hallway and say, I'm so happy that we're going back, but I'm not going to say that out loud. And so I'm trying to kind of hear all of these perspectives. But I think the formal way to do it, I was just asking for students to reach out to me, which some have. Some have, and I've invited to meet with me individually, but then seeing how that meeting goes on Friday, how many students come to that, and hearing what are the concerns. And it's the same process that I do with teachers. When I hear a pattern of concern about lunch, can we address it? About senior projects, can we address it with there's 68 of our total, 68 of the 603 are doing a senior project and are impacted by that. So I need to think about that, what's good for that small group, what's good for that big group. And so I think Friday will help me to think about what's next in terms of gathering feedback from students.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Molly.
So Jen, it's great that you're going to give the students a chance to talk to you on Friday, but there are 600 students in this school. Not sure that everyone will get to talk to you who may want to talk to you. So would advisory be a good place for the teachers maybe to debrief with the students and have that conversation? That's why we have advisory, just to hash out these types of problems and thoughts. And they also may be more comfortable speaking to a teacher than speaking to you.
Yeah.
They may have relationships with certain teachers that are conducive to them opening up more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some, it's a good point, and some advisors have already begun those conversations. Okay. And I will say, just as the concern for the teachers runs the gamut, so does the concern with the students. Some that have reached out to me individually have said that they're afraid about COVID, and they're concerned about the possibility of transmission in school. Others have said they don't want to wake up. They like their schedule the way that it is. Others have said that they like the freedom, that they're working, which they are not supposed to be doing. And I sent an email to students at the beginning of the year saying, remember, if you have altered your work schedule and we flip back to green, then you need to be ready to come to school every day. And so some of those concerns that they have, in my mind, some are very valid and some are not ones that we would make the decision about what's best for our students' health and safety. And then there's some students who have reached out and said that they're happy about coming back. And so it runs the gamut. And I think, again, I have to think about how I collect that feedback and then how we move forward on it. Because I want students to feel heard and that we take action on what their feedback is. But something like that they want to keep sleeping in, that's not going to be something that is going to be a factor that influences our decision. I understand it very much, but it's not going to be a reason why we would or why we wouldn't return.
I'll let my freshmen know not to say that on Friday then.
And the students, I am so empathetic with the thing that we are dealing with is constant change, which I said to the teachers, like, we are not the only industry who is in this place. There is so many industries that are figuring out what's the right thing to do, changing again, throwing out plans. It's incredibly frustrating for adults. And so, of course, it's incredibly frustrating for the teenagers. The high school will have gone from yellow to red to yellow to green. And we know that that is so, so difficult. But I think that is part of the nature of the pandemic that has been a factor that is complicating for our world right now. And so I definitely do not want to discount that.
Jen's like my spy for people who put their hands up fast and put them back down. You good, Lindsay?
I guess I want to thank you because this is a massive amount of work, a huge lift. The details and data really helped me feel pretty good about it. I think Becky hit the nail on the head when she was speaking to us saying, that I remember last August, and it's anticipatory anxiety that everybody's feeling right now. Teachers, students, whatever, because we're in transition yet again, and everybody's nervous systems are on high alert from the whole past year. But I guess I just wanted to reiterate from a background of mental health that I fully support the decision that you and Charlie have made. And I believe in the decision based on the mental health of our students. I believe it's where they belong. I know that we have the ability to pivot if we need to, and I don't think anyone's going to risk anyone's health. So we heard from two people in the medical world, I guess who are in the physical part, but as a former mental health counselor, I think one of the biggest factors of this entire pandemic for adults and young people alike is weighing mental health versus physical safety. You cannot underplay what this is doing to young people's and adults' mental health. So I firmly support the return, and I want to just make it stated out loud for those that are watching or listening that we have heard from other medical professionals who are also firmly aligned with this opening, also for the benefits of mental health of our students. So while we did hear from two live tonight, we are receiving information from other medical professionals. There's no way to please everybody. This is an impossible situation. It has been from the beginning. I remember speaking to anticipatory anxiety in August. We're back in that place again. It's normal. It's real. It's our body's way of protecting us. It's why we're still here as a species. But I think if we can recognize it and we can name it, that takes away some of it. It's real. It's legitimate. People are entitled to that. So anyway, just my thoughts. You have my full support, and I trust that we will continue. The other thing I said when processing with a fellow board worker is that I live my life day to day. I kind of had to learn to do that when I was an expat, otherwise I wasn't going to make it. And I've continued to live that way. And it's very countercultural, but I think the pandemic requires us to live one day at a time. So while you have my full support, and you had my full support last week, and you'll have my full support as we go into it, I also fully expect that this thing will be taken one day at a time, driven by data and safety. So that's where I stand, and I think it's the best decision for all, given the mess we're in, and weighing mental health of our students versus their physical health. Thank you, and thanks for everything you guys have done.
Thanks.
Maddie?
Thank you. Actually, our first speaker tonight, who's a nurse practitioner, addresses the full health, mental and physical, and was quite eloquent on both, I felt. Thank you, Jen. I have no doubt that our highly capable admin and staff and teachers can put together a solid plan, and you've shown that to us tonight, so I don't have questions for you. I do have thoughts that speak more to a point Volley made earlier about the process. So I do want to share those, and I'll be reading, so please pardon me for that. I'll begin by saying that I genuinely appreciate the enormously challenging work undertaken by this board, the administration, the teachers, and the staff to make education possible in an incredibly difficult year. And Dr. Foley, I know that it's been a huge lift. Yet I am quite hopeful that the reopening plan we've rolled out in our pre-K through 8 buildings will have been a big success worth celebrating. I do celebrate that. That said, I left last week's meeting feeling disheartened, and I came here tonight feeling still frustrated, feeling that I've been strong-armed into a rapid reopening plan at the high school without respect for the feedback of this body. We are hearing from parents and students and teachers in larger than normal numbers. Many of them are unhappy, not all. The situation was entirely avoidable if the following steps had been employed. Number 1, listening. When does it ever hurt a situation to take a breath, inquire about the perspectives of families, students, and teachers, and factor those into a decision before the decision is made? Even if the decision reached isn't what they hoped for, as you pointed out tonight, Jen, people at least feel heard, and they feel as though their perspectives are valued. This is something that the school board has been asking for all year. We've been putting out surveys, we've been reading every single comment, we've been discussing it here. Number 2, communication. Yes, change is hard. Communication, early communication, helps. A decision like this should be made over time. We were told on the 10th of March that Freeport High School students would be hopefully back by the end of April. We were told by email on the 17th that the plan was in the beginning phases, which is why there was nothing in writing for us to review. However, that very night, a lot of information was communicated verbally, and we were asked to take a straw poll without enough information to do so thoughtfully, in my view. And then last night, an email was sent to the entire high school community, outlined the details of the plan, which we had yet to discuss among us. Tonight, just now, Dr. Foley eloquently described why returning to 5 days is so important. I agree with everything that was shared. That all needs to be considered. But if that has indeed been the driving factor for weeks and for months, Why weren't we discussing it here? Number 3, rollout. Our middle and elementary schools phased in their 5-day plans, planned collaboratively with their staff, and invited families by group until they were gradually returned. This was a thoughtful approach versus the 50 to 100% plan that is currently on the deck for the high school. We haven't even had time to evaluate the results from the middle school rollout at Freeport Middle School or take those learnings into consideration. We now have a false argument growing in the community that some of our school board members are making decisions based on fear versus fact. But our board members have been largely supportive of getting students back in schools all year long. Where some of us differ with one another is in the nature of the rollout, the amount of caution exercised, and what this means for our teaching staff. Which brings me to the number 1 point of feedback that we've been hearing from teachers all year: slow down. Give me time to plan and adjust. Stop making quick changes. We, the school board, purport to care about the stress that our teachers are under, but I feel we have failed to act in their best interests. And now we have an even bigger problem. I've heard from several parents that last week's parent-teacher conferences at the high school were often conversations about the pending 5-day plan. Anytime an organization has its staff members going directly to the people they serve, students and families in this case, to make their feelings known, it's an indicator of a widespread lack of trust. We have undermined our staff and our own progress in the district by making a quick decision without input from multiple stakeholders. And as a board member, obviously, I could not be more disappointed in us. I'll close by saying that there are those who will willfully misunderstand the points that I'm making tonight, so I want to be clear. I'm in favor of returning our high school students to school 5 days a week. I always have been. However, as I have said for over a year now, these decisions must be made thoughtfully. Thoughtfully means not without significant input, not without early and transparent sharing of information, and certainly not rushed. I would like us to reconsider when we put this plan, which is an excellent plan, into action. I would like to ask that at the earliest, it be on the 26th of April, if not the 3rd of May. By such a time, we will have many students starting to get their vaccinations, those who are 16 and older. We will be past the April break. We will know if there's any kind of a spike after the April break, and we'll have some of our seniors out of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Jen.
I just want to respond to a thought that I have that was brought up when Maddie was speaking, is that I think there is also different board members have different beliefs on the level of involvement that the board should have. And I generally feel that we decided that we wanted to have the kids go back, and we did vote for that. I feel that there's a level of micromanagement that we need to be involved in every little tiny step. So while I completely respect what you've said, I disagree with the level of involvement that the board should have in all of the planning.
Valley.
I agree with the description of the process that Maddie put forth. I also agree that we need to bring the kids back to school 5 days a week at the high school. I don't think the 26th is a good date because it's right after the break, and we may see a spike that has nothing to do with this plan, and then this plan ends being the culprit for any spike that there may be, when in fact it's the April break. So I would never go for that date. But going back to the process, the one thing that I wish we had done is had those conversations that you're currently having with the teachers, before the plan was published and shared, and before a date was put on it. I was a little surprised when I read the survey to see that there were so many teachers who were not present for that poll. And you probably mentioned that last meeting. It didn't really sink into me that half of the teachers were there. So I just assumed that, okay, this is something that has been conversed, and there's been a level of communication inside the school that apparently hadn't happened. So lesson learned for the next time. That would be great if we could pay attention to those things, because it is more difficult now to get this rollout. And I'm fully in support of the rollout, and I'm fully in support of the 5th. But that's one of my regrets in this situation. But going back to the 5th, there are a couple of things that I really want to make sure that they get addressed, and that is supervision of the students. That's a concern of mine. So if there's any question about needing additional staff to be here at the cafeteria, because it will be open the entire day, to have supervision here for the entire day, not just for the 15 minutes of lunch, that I think that would put a lot of the concern to rest about not following the protocols that will ensure that this plan is a success. And the other question I had was, do the students have assigned seating in the classrooms so that if there should happen to be a positive case and we need to contact trace, we may possibly not have to quarantine the entire classroom, because we know that where the students are sitting, and we can measure the distance around that student who may have tested positive, so we don't send everybody home unless we have to.
So I can comment on a couple of things. I think one thing I just want to remind everybody, and I think I certainly hear the feedback about the process, is that just as a reminder that we have kept our evaluation system, our supervision and evaluation and coaching of teachers in place throughout the whole year. So Charlie and I have continued with the observations and meetings. So every time we visit a classroom, then we meet individually with the teacher throughout the year, and we have a set number of observations that we do. So I think that the feedback that I have been listening to the teachers, and Charlie has been, and talking, so we try to go to classrooms every day as much as we can, so then the meetings happen almost every day, spaced out, is that our current yellow hybrid system was unmanageable for them. That there were over and over again teachers saying, I don't know that I can make it to the end of the year in this plan, with what synchronous teaching was taking, with what that comment that I made came from a teacher. She said, I'm planning cohort A, cohort B, fully remote, and 5-day for one of my 6 classes. And so that was the feedback that I was hearing over and over again, in addition to our social workers and our guidance counselors being inundated with the students who need to see them, and families telling us that they cannot get a private counselor right now because there's waiting lists. And so those are the pieces. As I said, I hear, I think in my time here that I have worked hard to hear the voices of, we have 3 leadership teams, which represents a significant portion of our faculty. But I think that in this time, I have been listening and hearing parent feedback and student feedback and teacher feedback throughout the year, which absolutely influenced this decision. In terms of the seating arrangements for the students and reminding the students of the guidelines, absolutely. Right now, what we have been following is that the guidelines from the CDC have been that an entire classroom is quarantined if there is a positive case, but in the cafeteria or in the library or in larger spaces, then we have done that where we are locating who was around them and only quarantining those particular students. So if that guideline changed and we could do a seating arrangement and then just quarantine those kids, then we would follow that, but that hasn't been the guideline so far.
Becky.
Right, we don't have a choice on the quarantine. I did also just, Jen and I talked about whether to inform her staff like a week earlier, but we made, right or wrong, the strategic move to wait because of the equity work, and we didn't want them to be all abuzz when we were doing the equity work on March 12th. So, you know, I don't know whether I feel like that was a mistake. I don't know whether I'll feel that was a mistake a month from now. We are taking the equity work very seriously, and so that was strategic to postpone it a week. So we could have done it a week earlier, because basically we had the basic plan that they had worked out, where they had figured out a way to do it. It has worked out that we brought the elementary kids back first, not because we said our plan is to bring back the elementary kids first and then do the next and then the next. If Jen and Charlie had said to me in the fall, we have this figured out, we would have done the high school first. It's just that because of, I think, the nature of the beast, it was easiest to figure it out at the elementary level. And we did worry about the kids at that level because of the daycare and everything. You heard from Ray, his system was pretty complicated. And so that took a long time to figure that out. And so that's why the rollout ended up going the way that it went. And I don't think it's unlike other places. But never did we vote. We didn't vote last summer. We didn't vote when we went to Hybrid Plus. We didn't vote when we brought the middle school kids back, because we know it's divided. You get the gist of the emails, and I just didn't want, I can't do that every time we need to pivot to a different level. I think the high school is a little bit more difficult because they've been in yellow so long that I think there was this feeling that, we're just going to stay in that for the rest of the year. But when you know it's going to be split, and honestly, if we had voted last August with the Moore Street staff, it would have been 100% the teachers saying, we don't want to come back, we don't think it's safe, or it would have been at least 90%. And so there are some things where you want to do that quick survey to find out where they're at. But I also don't want to divide the board. I don't want to divide the parents, because there are two sides to this. And so that's why we didn't do the quick survey, because we haven't done that at any other level at any time, and I hadn't heard any criticism around that. I understand that there are some people that feel like it's rushed because they haven't been on the inside of the details, right, in planning those. But we've been, as I've said before, since August, we are thinking. This board has pushed us to think creatively. We've never stopped thinking. So what feels rushed to some people, it has been, since last August and July when we were creating these plans, that we've been working towards this day of bringing all of our kids back.
I would say that I didn't feel like this rollout was any quicker or different than the middle school, right? I mean, the elementary schools was a little bit different just because based on the class sizes, grade levels, we were able to shuffle and there was other things going on. I didn't feel like this was particularly faster than Ray and Will coming to us and saying, okay, we've got this figured out. I wonder if it feels more rushed because, for me personally, I was like, I don't know how they're going to figure it out. I would be amazed if they could figure it out. I'm just going to assume, I'm going to plan for yellow for the year because it's such a complex beast of a organization, right, to figure out the high school. So maybe people just had sort of made that assumption in their head, like it's going to be too hard to do the high school. So so then when it came out, it was like, wait, what? We can do the high school? And maybe it felt rushed. I'm not sure. I didn't feel like the process was different. We didn't see surveys from any of the other schools' staff about the rollouts. And who knows, maybe the right way on all of them should have been that was the process. But, to Becky's point, we rolled these other ones out and there wasn't, pushback from this body to say, hey guys, we could be doing this differently. Like you said, rightly or wrongly, there was probably a few more days that they could have been rolled out sooner to the staff, but decisions have to be made, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're maybe not. So, I continue to be in favor of the plan. I continue to be in favor of the 5th. I appreciate the folks we had speak today from the medical field. But I do think it's a balance. If all else was equal and our education was 100% identical, whether it was here or whether it was delivered at home remotely, I think we'd be remote, right? Because we wouldn't take any risk because we weren't losing anything by doing it. But we are losing something by doing it remotely or in the hybrid model. And so we really have to weigh the risk, which, from Nancy's letter to the board, she says herself, the science says it's negligible risk to the staff with what we're losing with the kids academically, socially, emotionally, their mental well-being. So I appreciate the perspective. I think we need them all. I think we need to hear them all. But I'm still in favor of the plan. So thanks. Liam.
Yeah, I guess I just want to clarify personally, and I don't think I have done that in the letter or today. The plan, I think, is very thought through. I think I feel comfortable going back with a plan. What stands out to me, and I think it's not something I've asked a lot of students, but what I think makes the entire thing so odd to me is that we're going back on April 5th, and on April 19th, vaccinations will start for a large majority of high school students. And it just seems weird or odd to me, I guess, that we've been going for 12 months and then we're 2 weeks away from starting to get vaccines. And at the rate that Maine's been going, it's realistic that students will start getting vaccinated on April 19th. And I guess, yeah, that's just where I think it's odd that, you've got the 5th, you've got the 19th, that's 14 days compared to the year that we've spent now. And I guess that's really all I have to say to it is April 5th seems to be a weird time to be going back compared to everything that's going on right now. Thank you.
It's weird, the convolutions of like everything at once, right? I mean, we've all spent this year thinking about all these things that may happen, and it does seem like they're all going to happen kind of at once. So, Susanna.
Just to follow up on Liam and what has been said, just to clarify, everybody is saying that they want everybody back. It's the dates that we're struggling with, and what we heard, 70% of the teachers said April 26th. The people we heard from tonight that were online, most of the people that were here, said the later date. So I think we need to think about that date. I think April 5th, is it worth it to drag teachers back who don't feel that comfortable with it for 2 weeks, instead of having everybody a little more solidly in about going back to school? So I think, again, everybody is saying 5 days, yes, they're for it, but it's the date. And I think we need to think about that and consider that.
Susanna.
Thank you. And I just want to echo that, John, I appreciate, and everybody here, the creativity and that the plan is evolving and that we're taking it. It's not the plan from last summer. We're looking at how things are going, how they've gone in other districts, how they've gone in other schools in this district. And as we're bringing more people back, how can we do this? And I really appreciate the creativity and the evolution of that. I guess where I see it maybe as a bit rushed is when a week ago, Monday, when we heard about a plan and we asked whether we could see it, and we were told we couldn't because it was still in its nascent stage. And then to hear that this has been something that's been going on all along. And I mean, we know at some level it has, and as I said earlier, I was part of that group that created the green plan last summer, so I know that it's been going along. But not to have any update and then to ask for it and be told it doesn't exist, and then to get a fully fledged plan. I think that's where, for me, it's a little bit hard to see. We wanted to be looking at this and talking about it, and suddenly it's here. So I think that's one issue that I struggle with. But I don't want to look at the process too much. I did want to say, as Angela's mentioned, asking about the date. Last week we gave a straw poll, which in my opinion or my understanding at the time was sort of a check the temperature of the board and just see what things are. And I don't know if, I know the 5th won out on that. I don't know whether that was the vote that you took to move forward or not, but there was a brief hesitation with that. Is this a straw poll or is this an actual vote? And looking at the data here that Becky gave with COVID cases, we know that the more cases we have after Thanksgiving, after Christmas break, winter break, and after February break. And if we're coming back right after April break, or even right before, what Vali mentioned about the plan versus the timing. And I would like to give some consideration to either, May 3rd. I don't know if the discussion of the date is even on the table, but if it is, I would like to have that discussion about whether the 5th is actually the date this could be. Because I do think, you're talking, Jen, about the teachers feeling overloaded with 4 different plans, and I fully understand that, but we have 70% of the teachers saying that they don't think this is the appropriate plan for them right now anyway. And so just seeing both sides of that, I understand. I'm just wondering if that date is still something that we can discuss and whether we need to be thinking about that further. So thank you.
Hold on 1 second, Jen. I think just to clarify, it was a straw poll, right? And I think, that was used in their decision-making process. But to be clear, we don't need to vote on this. This isn't something we would vote on. If we wanted to sort of override Becky's decision, right? Because when we voted in August to allow her to move between the plans, that's what this is, right? This is moving between the plans. Clearly, she wanted to get the temperature of the board and our perspective on it, what probably wisely so, to at least have the conversation. If we wanted to then rescind our vote from August, we could do that, but there's a process to do that. So if people feel like they want to override that and go through that process, I can certainly walk folks through what it looks like. But did you have your hand up?
Yes, I just kind of wanted to, one of the things that Emily Grimm has said to me in the last few days is that she was surprised at the adjustment period for even some of the elementary kids who hadn't been back 5 days a week. And so she felt like the timing is really good because she said it's kind of exhausting for the kids who have not been back 5 days a week, that it's going to be an adjustment. And so to have them back for 2 weeks and then they have a break, that's not a bad plan. Because then, they'll have a break and then they'll come back. Obviously, it is data that I look at every day. I mean, we were ready to bring Durham Community School back on Monday, and on Sunday, I received a call from Will that said, we have a problem. And so if in 2 weeks on Sunday, Jen calls me and says we have a problem, we're going to have to change our mind about that. But right now, to think about May 3rd, I'm going to go back to what I said to you. For our kids with resources, they're doing fine. for our kids without those, for those that are failing, to wait until May 3rd. Some of those are not going to make it. And so, you know, I'll take full responsibility for the process feeling rushed, but I will still come down on the side of those kids and families that are struggling. We need them back as soon as we can get back. And I understand that the high school teachers would feel more comfortable being vaccinated, and as Liam said, to have some of our kids vaccinated. But at what cost, right? And, you know, I'm going to do yet another shout out to our nutrition staff. Last March, when we went remote and when we knew the least about COVID, our nutrition staff stood up and went out and served families and were wondering every day, am I going to be infected? We know more now than we ever did back then. And yes, I know that feel more comfortable vaccinated, but to me, it's not worth the cost to our families and kids that are failing right now.
Jen? Okay. Bali?
I think what would be really helpful, Becky, is all information that we talked today about all the reasons why this decision was made and why you guys landed on the 5th as the best date. I think it'd be really useful for the entire community to know that thought process, the 38% who are failing and the 18% who are failing 2 or more classes, and the number of kids who are falling behind, and the families who need this, and even the timing, why the 5th is better than the 26th. I think this is all information that's fresh from this evening to most people in the community, and I think we need to share that information.
Other comments, questions? As always, a healthy discussion, so thank you all for that. And, you know, I think if we are a microcosm of the community, I mean, I think it's very clear that this is a difficult decision. I mean, there's no perfect answer. It's all about the balance and where we come down in that. So I respect everybody's thoughts, and I appreciate all of the comments tonight from public comment and all the folks who took the time to write to us. My phone has been buzzing up a storm tonight, so I'm feeling we're going to have a bunch more when we get out. But thank you for everybody's input. Maddie. We do have one more public comment. Oh, yes. So right now, this is a board discussion. There is one more public comment period towards the end of the agenda. So if folks had something else they wanted to share, they are welcome to do that at that point. Maddie?
In no way would I want us to rescind the decision we made on the 12th. I actually went back and reviewed that tape because I wondered about it. Because I wondered, why are we straw polling like crazy this year instead of actually voting? And then my memory was jogged, and I wanted to go back and review it. We made that vote at midnight, if you recall. And Susanna and I were the 2 board members who said, we just want to, we raised the point that, sure, going red, absolutely, we want you to be able to do that. Going green, there was some concern. And it was a very short conversation because we were all exhausted. But the conversation was about just keep us abreast of what's going on when you're considering going green. Contrary to what was suggested before, I have no desire to micromanage at all. I am not capable of making the decisions that you are making myself. I don't have the expertise that you all have. I just felt surprised, and I laid out that timeline with what I heard the first meeting in March and the second meeting in March, and the response to the email that I sent with a request for information. And this has felt different because we have heard, and I've heard personally from members of our community, including students, families, and staff, more than ever before. That's why it's felt different. So thank you for taking that feedback. I think that's important. I have a hunch I know which way this would go if we took another straw poll, but I would be curious to know if our board is supportive of sticking with the 5th or would like us to take a look at the 26th. I think I know which way it'll go, but I think the question should be asked.
So you want to do another straw poll? You don't want to change the vote from?
I don't want to change the vote from the 12th. Okay. No.
Because that's like a whole process. And I got the paperwork to do it.
No, good God, no.
Okay. Yep.
I totally understand that, like, we did the straw vote and that it's, but I do really strongly feel that the decision of the date lies in the hands of the superintendent and the administrators. So, I mean, I understand, like, I just am not sure what would, because I feel strongly that decision on the date is theirs, I'm not sure why it matters where we are as a board on that date.
Yeah, I don't know. Generally our straw polls are done at the request of the administration to help them make decisions, which is what I think happened last week. I mean, we can do a straw vote and see where it comes down. I mean, obviously we have different people here this time than last week, and folks missing, but are people comfortable revisiting that date? Susanna?
I'm comfortable revisiting that date, but if the decision's not ours, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with a straw poll that's just going to identify our individual positions if there is no chance of revisiting. If the date's the 5th and that's the end of it, I think I'd rather not divide the board by identifying who thinks which way. But if the date is movable, I'm open to another straw poll. I think one lesson going forward with this is that if we're going to have a straw poll that maybe is going to be used with some more weight to it, which this one feels like it has perhaps, that we can just be a little bit clearer with that yes, this would be a formal vote, but for various reasons, it's not going to be a formal vote. I think that clarity, because last week it felt like, hey, we're just tossing around some ideas. Going into it, this is this nascent plan. Just, how's it feeling? And I think that's the impression that several of us went to last week. And so I think that's where, for me, it hurts a little bit, or I feel it a little bit more. But I'm not sure I'm comfortable doing a straw vote if there's no impact on the date.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel about at the request of admin, right? So if they feel like our input is helpful to them, then we do them. If they don't necessarily need that, then we don't. Maddie?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think let's just make it very clear for the public watching, because I think there was an expectation for many that this might be up for another vote tonight. And so a straw poll versus a vote versus how that's tied to what we decided on August 12th is not necessarily clear to our community.
So you think just a what? Did you? Oh.
I just said that's a fair point that Maddie's making.
So maybe just a quick explanation of the distinction between why we're not voting on it tonight? So, and I think we've talked a little bit about it, but obviously were more familiar with what we did apparently at midnight back in August. So back in August when we voted on, what our re-entry to school looked like plan, where the 3 different plans, the red, the yellow, and the green, were laid out and detailed. Obviously, those have evolved over time, which was clear at that night that was going to happen. But so they've evolved over time a bit. But essentially, the framework was, what it looked like, the hybrid versions, all remote and then fully in person. And we had a vote on the plan itself, and then we had a vote that allowed Dr. Foley to move within those ranges. And I do recall your comment about, clearly red needs to be able to be quickly moved upon, similar to what we've seen happen at some of the schools over the past 5 or 6 months. But green obviously should be more of a conversation. So that's sort of where we are. If we chose to rescind that vote and then have a formal vote of what we wanted the return to school to look like and when, we could do that, but it's a process, and it doesn't sound like that's the will of the board to undertake that at this point. So, essentially our vote last week was, sort of the straw opinion of the board of when we, were it up to us, when we would bring back the kids 5 days at the high school. And, based on that piece of information, along with all of the other data points that, Jen and Charlie and Dr. Foley have used to make these decisions, that was their decision to move forward with the 5th. So, okay. All right, I have no idea where my agenda is. All these pieces of paper. Are we back to the budget, or do we have other stuff in the middle? I think we do. We have middle stuff. Can I see your agenda? Oh, good, more board comments. Okay. All right, so number 11 on the agenda, board comments and committee reports. So board information exchange and agenda requests. Jen?
I just wanted to give a quick update to the board about the Region 10 budget. So I just received an email today that there has been a meeting added to revisit the budget and talk about that on this coming Monday evening. And I did get some feedback from Volley about the budget, the Region 10 budget, and I talked to Michelle about it and prepared some talking points for that meeting based on some of the things that were brought up. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we are having a meeting, and then the final vote on the budget will be the Monday after vacation. So I'll keep everyone up to date on that.
Great.
Do you have a question for me, Beth?
I do. I'm just wondering if this Region 10 budget is available somewhere online so people can access it and look at it.
That piece that was given to us last week, I think we could probably send out. I also did send out the line-by-line budget to all the board members.
I know not for us though, for the community. Is it available online for other people that may be interested to look at it and have questions?
I don't know if Paul has posted that or whether that's just for the board.
So I did look, and the minutes on the page have not been updated, so I doubt that is available. So that would be something we'd need to kind of figure out if someone wanted that. And that piece of paper that we were given, that really just addresses the COVID additions. It doesn't address the rest of the additions to the budget. So it's kind of only half of the information of what's driving the big increase.
Yeah, I was just thinking that if it was somewhere online, the way that our budgets are online, so people can access and look at it. But if we
I wasn't able to find it. But I mean, they're public meetings, right? So if we had it in our packet last week, it could be on our website with our packet, right?
Yeah.
Or was it not?
I don't know, but I don't mind reaching out to Paul too, to see if, he's made that public, and if he has, then we can definitely post it.
I think it would be helpful, though, if there's going to be a posting, that it would include all of the
whole budget.
The whole budget, because I think it's important to know all the driving factors, not just the COVID.
Right, because you can see the total increase, but they break out what some of the kind of like we do, the main drivers of the increase. So they talk about the COVID drivers of the increase, but not the other drivers of the increase. So, all right, thank you, Jen. Any other board comments? All right, Finance Committee, Jeremy.
Thank you, Michelle. Don't have much to add from when Rick spoke approximately 3 years ago at the podium over there. We did, this was before our prior meeting, so we did discuss the summer school money, being used for from CARES funds instead of from the standard budget, just because of the requirements around that. Also had a visit from Ray Grogan talking about some funds that are sort of in limbo right now around the Quebec trip that was canceled last year, and trying to find ways to recoup some funds that are in limbo right now. And then we also revisited the basically just our understanding of the cost sharing formula now that we had some of the per town tax numbers available in our documents, just so we get a refresher on how does that number and percentage come to be. So nothing earth-shattering by any means, but it was a good educational session as we got Rick's perspective on the cost-sharing formula as it currently is in place.
Peculiar, is that the word he uses? Unique. No, I think I changed peculiar to unique.
But anybody in a cowboy's mask is questionable in this room. So.
I know, he calls us peculiar, really? Any questions for Jeremy? All right, so we will move on to policy. Candy.
Okay, excuse me. A couple things to let you know. One, that the Mid-Atlantic Equity Group was looking at our policies and suggested a few edits, which includes looking at Title IX. And right now, I guess those suggestions are being reviewed by our lawyers, and then the policy group will take that up again when we get that information. And I guess we were told that there are going to be two, new policies and procedures, which we haven't had before, and one of those will have to do with earned paid leave in policies that we'll look at. And the ones that Cynthia will talk to you about tonight, one of them was pretty simple, about using gender-neutral language. And we made some suggestions there in including calling the name of the policy respectful language. And basically the policy about tobacco use and possession, basically we scrapped the old one and there's a more lengthy new one there. And one thing that used to be a policy, the organizational chart, is being rescinded because it'll now just be a procedure, not a policy. So those are, and one on curriculum development, which we made next to no little changes, so that won't be coming up for review tonight. That's basically it, other than saying we still are going to look at the social emotional. That was suggested that we look at that and where we want to put something in our policies about that. But that was basically it. So here she goes.
Good evening. So before you, just so you know, this last packet is the final packet of all the policies. So after we get these adopted, we will have reviewed every single policy. one time. Or some of them we reviewed more than once, but. So congratulations to the policy committee. So I think Candy really did a great job of just explaining ACA, which is, was or is gender neutral language, and the policy committee made a suggestion to call it respectful language. That first line is struck out, but it's kept, the sentiment of that first line is captured in what is written below. So I'll let you look that over.
I think it's interesting that it was previously called gender neutral language, and the only sentence of the policy really had nothing to do with gender neutral language. But whatever.
Yeah. That was BC before Cynthia,
Cynthia
before our committee. It is interesting.
So one question about the respectful language policy. Do we have one policy addressing respectful language that is non-gender based? Because it seems like we're isolating just gender, but respectful language should apply to many other types of groups and situations.
I mean, we have codes of conduct. I couldn't extrapolate out any specific policy that would address that. There's probably respectful language embedded in some policy, but to my knowledge, no, to answer your question.
I guess
so you're challenging the, oh, I'm sorry.
The first sentence is sort of just general respectful language, right? Inclusive learning. I mean, doesn't specifically talk about the gender neutral piece, but.
Right, but then it gives those
then it goes
bullets
further
that are
in,
very much gender based.
Yeah.
So I could see very similar bullets for other things like sexual orientation, race, ethnicity. I mean, on and on and on.
I think those are all in there, right?
That third bullet, I think, is trying to capture the.
Everybody good with that one? Carry on.
Okay. And the next one, this was a policy that MSMA had revised, I think, early 2020. And so that's why we struck the whole thing out. And then you'll see on the following pages, they've just pretty much expanded it, and they really focused a lot on the definitions and clarifying the definitions, like any and everything that could possibly come under tobacco is really explained out very well. Even that beginning introductory paragraph talks about, what the research shows and lays the groundwork for the rest of it. And then they have general consequences for students and staff spelled out. It does talk about, at the top of page 2, at all times and what it means. It's really specific about it's 100% of the time, and then how situations will be handled. And then, of course, it addresses the advertising of tobacco products, which we also have in our advertising policy.
Valerie.
I have a question about whether we allow anyone to sell, distribute, or dispense tobacco products to people other than students on school grounds. We don't allow it.
Mm-mm.
Then we should strike 2 students. The last sentence under definitions, it says all persons are prohibited from selling, distributing, or dispensing tobacco products to students in school buildings, on school grounds, or at school-sponsored events at all times. But it seems to me that we should just not say to students because it applies to everyone, including students.
Yep.
And then the other comment I had is under students, the second paragraph where it begins, the superintendent or their designee reserves the right to refer students to a law enforcement agency on a case-by-case basis as they may deem necessary. The second sentence where it reads that the superintendent shall refer to a law enforcement agency, I'm not comfortable with that. I would rather just have it case by case at the discretion of superintendent and not automatically send a student and refer that person to law enforcement. And I want to know how administrators feel about that? Would that tie your hands? Do you want to have that so you don't have to make the decision? It seems a little draconian from the perspective of a student.
I can bring that to our administrative team at our next meeting to discuss that, and then bring that information back to policy and here.
Right, because I think, in real life, what that would be is if, somebody had a vape pen, which they shouldn't have, it's against the policy, but they generally wouldn't get, sent to the police for it, and they hand it to a person next to them, that's now dispensing or distributing, right? So now we are required to send them to the police for that. That does seem a little extreme. I mean, I like the first sentence that they reserve the right to if they ever feel like it's necessary or appropriate, but like shall seems a little intense. But I'd be interested
I agree,
to hear.
and I think half the students will be referred to law enforcement, so I think we need to be careful what we put in our policy.
Yeah, Officer McManus is like, please don't send them all to me. Patty.
I don't understand. I'm sorry we didn't catch this. It almost seems like it's saying, the two sentences are saying completely different things. It seems like there should be one sentence or the other. So, yeah. I guess I'm apologizing for not catching that.
Well, I think the first sentence is saying, like, if they were just using or smoking on campus, you wouldn't, but if they did it every single day, you might eventually, turn it over, right? So that's the first sentence, like, if they deem necessary. But the second sentence where it talks about selling, distributing, or dispensing, it says they shall. Maybe that's the distinction, I'm not sure, but. Susanna.
I'm just on this wondering whether that second sentence is necessary. If it's on a case-by-case basis,
Yeah, that's
there's
what I'm
going to
thinking.
be
You could just
some
strike that whole sentence.
distinction of what that case-by-case is. And if it meets requirements that it's referred to law enforcement, then that first sentence covers it, does it not? I mean, I understand wanting to spell out perhaps the distribution and selling is maybe different than usage, but nowhere in the first sentence does it say usage specific.
Yeah, no, I think that's a way to, to just strike that second sentence, and then it provides you with the flexibility you need in sentence one if you need it.
And we can follow internal
Right.
rules on the case-by-case basis.
Right.
Okay. So those are the two policies that are for first read. Have a motion. Oh, sorry.
Beth.
Just one more question. So are we all okay with it under the staff? If the staff is caught in any way dispensing products to the students, that they shall be sent to the police?
That one I think I'm
am
okay
more
with.
comfortable
Yeah.
with, yes. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that that was okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, strike the student but leave the staff.
So I'd ask for a motion.
Oh, didn't we have another one?
No.
Oh, that's a separate motion to
Yes.
rescind? Oh, okay.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just building on Beth's point there on the next page over, when it's talking about other persons in violation, the second part of that person suspected of selling, distributing, and then again, it shall be referred. Is that shall problematic there for the same reason? Because I understand the difference between student and staff, but now we're talking about a parent at the football game, for example. We're now saying that if they were distributing something, we shall refer them. So I'm just wondering whether that should be in the same language as the student one about shall be dealt with
As
appropriately, or something that enables us to use law enforcement if necessary, but doesn't bind that as the answer.
Maddie.
I don't think I can think of any situation where I wouldn't want to refer that person to law enforcement. A visitor, or a parent, a vendor.
No,
I would leave it like the previous one Beth mentioned.
Okay, I fully agree. I just was wondering about logistics with people coming in quickly. So
Everybody good with that? Okay, so, it's only 2 pages. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval for the following policies? First read, ACA, gender neutral language, which is really not gender neutral language, it's respectful language, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ADC, tobacco use and possession. Susanna, second. Maddie, thank you. All those in favor? Great, none opposed.
Thank you. Okay. And then the next one is the organizational chart. If you remember, not too long ago, we had done policy CC, which is administrative organization, and it makes a reference to the organizational chart. So this actually is an exhibit that ties back to another policy. So this really doesn't, it sets out the organizational chart. So we're looking to rescind it with these revisions in place. And it would go on the forms and procedures forms and exhibits side. And so we would rename it CC-E, so it would pair up with the policy CC.
Any questions on that one? All right, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval to rescind the following policy, CCA, organizational chart? Lindsay, Susanna, thank you. All those in favor? None opposed. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And Michelle, before we move on
Yeah.
down the agenda, I have some comments that Maura wanted me to share about the curriculum development one, the one that was no changes
reviewed,
were recommended.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She felt as though it would be helpful for the board to have more frequent updates on curriculum. So she doesn't have any suggestions that we should change the policy, but she would love to get more information about curriculum in general. And she also wondered if it would be possible, whenever you find the time, to write a description of all the curricula that we currently have in place.
Okay.
Would that be possible?
Yes.
And share with the board so that board members who have arrived after, say, we implemented everyday math or TC or things that some of us have heard about and others haven't, know what it is that we're using in the different schools for curricula.
I think that's a great one to put on our list to talk about
Yes.
at the summer retreat.
Perfect.
Because that would be a workshop that we could do, you know, back when we can do normal workshops again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you're up again.
I'm staying here because I'm up again. So there was a little glitch in the calendar. As you know, that the 3 districts have to have only 5 days different, and Brunswick used to have 176 days, and now they have 175, which was not communicated. And so, long story short, there ended up being 6 days different. When I looked at the calendar, I'm the one that offered up to make the change because the March PD day was on our, let me pull this out here. It was on the 18th. And when we discussed it early in September, the 3 districts, we were all okay with either the 11th or the 18th. The other 2 districts had chosen the 11th, and it makes sense for us to just shift it to be the same, which was the same Friday that we actually just had. We had the March 12th this year. So it's not changing anything that we haven't had in the past. So that's just the amendment that I would like to have approved tonight.
Okay, so we're just moving the PLD. Previously, it was
1 week.
approved for the 18th, and we're moving it to the 11th.
Correct.
Beth.
I just have a question about, do we have to, I guess we didn't vote on the, I was just thinking about the professional learning days that the high school needs in order to get ready, but we didn't have a vote because it's not changing the calendar for the whole, okay, all right, thank you.
All right, so any other questions for Cynthia on that? Did you tell them you'd move it if they got rid of April break?
Oh, no,
February break? I don't know, some break. Just get rid of one.
April break this year would be great.
Yeah, right.
Yes, it would.
I know, right?
It would, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval to revise the 2021-2022 school calendar? Maddie, Valley, thank you. All those in favor? Great.
Thank
None
you so
opposed.
much.
So we are up to our budget update. It's 10:15.
This is going to be good.
Okay, perfect.
Rick, have you already handed out those sheets? They have them? Okay. This is a very, very brief update. We really have not made any changes other than to a slight reduction in the Region 10 budget. And so you can see on the tan sheet, and Jenny apologized for the color, but I said I think it goes well with mud season. So I thought it was very appropriate. That we are now, because of that slight reduction, if you remember, our portion from Region 10 was going to be an additional 100,000, and now we're down to an additional like 79,000. And that then changes our expenditure increase to 2.20. And then that puts a tax impact to Durham of 3.11, to Freeport 2.87, and to Pownell 2.51. And Jen's already told you about their special meeting where we're hoping that they will maybe further reduce it. I did have a meeting yesterday with Paul, and he assured me that the budget would not go up. So that's why I'm showing you that revised sheet. And then Rick has passed out to you the updated sheets showing the tax impact to the 3 towns. And I think, is it on white? It's on, okay.
So Becky, what is it that caused the reduction for Region 10?
They pretty
we have
much, oh, you have it?
I have it. Did I just print
I
it
don't know,
myself?
I have that,
yes.
but you,
I think it's in your packet.
So
If you see the alternate, look in your purple. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, maybe. Let's try it.
I can
You
run
don't
through
have
it real
it?
quick. So basically, it's an $85,000 decrease. You do have it. Yeah. So I mean, it's a couple of small things. They dropped their contingency down. Last year, they had increased their contingency. They had historically been in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. They increased it to 27, probably given the uncertainty of what was going on last year. The initial budget didn't propose that changing, so that's one of the bigger pickup lines. And then the other one was program equipment lines. So if you look through the line item budget, there was a lot of equipment across the various programs, so they must have dialed that in a little bit tighter.
I think they moved that to the Perkins grant that they receive every year.
Oh, that's a grant? Okay, yeah, it says move to Perkins. And then two of the things related to the portables, they're moving off the operating budget, and they're going to use their capital reserve for it.
Becky, did you get this?
Yesterday, yeah.
Okay, because we didn't.
You haven't seen this yet?
No.
Oh. Well, there you go.
I guess you have some process issues going on.
I'll go back and look, but I
imagine you'll probably get this before your meeting on Monday. Maybe, I don't know. So those are Zoom meetings, right? We can all attend? Okay. Yeah, so that was the Region 10 update. Yeah, Susanna.
Thank you. I've got a further question on the Region 10 update. I see the revised budget, but on Becky's last week when it was 202,000 or whatever it was, and we had suggested maybe 100,000, and then now it's down. I'm struggling to see the 80,000 effectively that we have on this 10 mud season sheet.
So that 80,000 is just the increase over what we
Yes.
paid last year.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So that's
you'll
not.
see it,
That's it.
you'll see it
Okay.
at the bottom
That's a
here.
driver.
Okay, that makes sense then. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so it'll be 180-ish. Yeah. No? Okay. Well, you're well prepared ahead of time. All right. So, that is the update. So we are now looking at the full budget and the adoption of the full budget. We have that white paper that shows all of the articles, the change year over year, the impact, to the three towns, based on, at just a reminder, the estimated mill impact is just that. It's an estimate to try and help voters understand what it might do to their tax bills. It's based on the April 1, 2020 information valuation. So I think in general, in a rising value environment, which we have certainly seen, this is a conservative estimate because this assumes that no new valuation came onto the tax rolls over the last year. So I won't say this is sort of the worst case scenario, but it generally, valuation between year to year goes up, which means it would bring the impact on the typical tax or all the taxpayers down because you're spreading it over more value. So. So just a little reminder on that. And if anybody looks at these numbers in terms of the valuation and then for whatever reason chose to go look at the ED 279 values, those will not match. Couple reasons. These valuations on here are from the towns. This is what they value their towns at. And as you guys may recall, the state does a valuation for every municipality. They sort of try to equalize the methodology across the state. And also the ED 279 is an average of 2 years. So you'll never get these numbers to match the ED 279, and that's why. So if anybody is so inclined and doing that research, I'll save you the effort because it won't match. This is more based on like what your actual taxes are based on. That's what this number is. So any questions, comments? I will say this is probably the smoothest, quietest budget process we've had. So I'm going to say that's a huge thank you to Becky and her team for, really coming to us with a budget that meets the needs, but is very respectful of where we are in the sort of unknown world of COVID and the economy today. So I appreciate you guys doing that hard work ahead of time so that, we didn't have to go through and slash and burn things to keep it, reasonable for taxpayers. Not that, 2.5% to 3% isn't nothing. I mean, it's material. And I'll also remind folks that the reason that the expenditure increase is 2.2, but the tax impact is different, also driven by the number of students. So our subsidy dropped year over year. So, even if we had been flat in terms of our budget, we got less from the state. So we would have to fill that gap. So just a quick reminder on that too.
You want to give them a quick update if you're thinking if it comes down that we'll revote?
Oh, right. So if next week at the Region 10 budget, they have a major change of heart that would materially impact what the assessment to the three towns was. So right now it looks like it's going to be about $180,000 for RSU 5. with those adjustments that were presented yesterday. You know, if they came down materially from that, we could always revisit it and reduce, you know, our adopted budget by whatever ours dropped more. You know, I would say, in my mind, I would want it to be sort of a material amount, because anytime we're changing things, particularly if but I mean, they're not going to vote until April 26th. So, you know, we won't know the final number until then. And by then our budget booklet will have been printed. If it's a large number, it's probably worth adjusting our adopted budget down so that we're not over collecting taxes. If it's more of a minor immaterial number, then I would, you know, suggest we just keep what we have, and you know, it'll likely just roll into the undesignated fund balance, which we can use the following year to offset taxes. So obviously that's the board decision, but that's sort of my thought process where we are now. So. Did you have your hand up, Susanna? No. You didn't? Okay. No, I just don't want to miss you now because I'm not used to looking directly left anymore. I was told that sometimes I ignore whole halves of the room, so trying to make sure I scan all the way around for folks. All right, so comments, questions? Are we ready for a vote? All right, do I have a motion for consideration and adoption of the superintendent's FY22 recommended budget as presented? Maddie, Valley, thank you. Any more questions before we vote? All right, all in favor? None opposed. I'd love a 12-0 vote on that one. Thank you, guys, and thank you to Becky and your team. And Rick. Thank you, Rick. I mean, you're part of her team. Yeah. But you've done a great job, and you know, we appreciate your effort, particularly in your first year getting the, you know, our unusual way of doing everything. Our unique way of doing everything. Peculiar. All right, we have no new business. We have no personnel issues, so we are back to the final public comment of the evening. So thank you to the folks who hung in there. If you were still interested in sharing a comment with the board, now would be your opportunity. If you can use your raise hand function, and it sounds like we do have somebody. Lisa Blyer.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you all for all the hard work you've been doing throughout this incredibly challenging year. I wish I had spoken earlier. I didn't realize this was a done deal until it was a done deal, but I think it's important now that I voice on behalf of high school teachers. I just want everyone to know we care about our students. High school teachers truly care about their students. And I feel like throughout this meeting, I've heard a lot of misrepresentation of that high school teachers are really prioritizing their own health. And that's not the case. We work with a very different population than grade school students. And we foster independence, autonomy, and the fact that as 17, 16, 18-year-olds, you have a voice that matters. And as I hear Liam and I heard Brady, I think about Brady last week. I think about the fact that at this point, they can speak, but their voices don't have any impact because it's been a decision that has been made before their voices were heard. And that saddens me, that disappoints me. I look at the fact that I'm a teacher today, was told to go home. I was quarantined along with other teachers and had to rush home and teach from my couch, as another one of my colleagues had to come in and staff the room. And I just feel that a lot of this could be eliminated if we listen to some of our staff, some of our students, and make a decision based on everybody's input. So I realize I'm late to the game right now, but I just wanted that to be heard, that we are a staff that truly cares about our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Tim? Yes. Tim Gravois.
Hi. So I'm also a high school teacher, and I would like to echo the sentiments of my colleague, but I wanted to quickly speak to just a couple issues I had heard brought up. The first being teacher mental health. Being in the hybrid model is tremendously difficult, and there's no question that myself and many of my colleagues have struggled to kind of find a balance during the yellow plan. But I did want to say, as a building rep and a teacher who is speaking to my colleagues all the time, that the increased burden and the toll that it will have as risk mitigation that has been systemic is kind of put more on the individual judgment call of teachers, right? That is going to have an even kind of more significant effect on teacher mental health than remaining in the yellow plan and the continued, burden of planning in a system that they're unfamiliar with. As more students return and teachers are going to have to, make individual decisions on how comfortable they are in their classroom with this many students, and take on additional planning and movement around the building, and weighing this idea of, do I work closely with this student at a higher risk? That, I think, is going to have a tremendous effect on teacher mental health. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate that. And the second thing is that, related to that, I understand that many teachers have provided feedback to our principal, who has been tremendously supportive. And I do want to make that clear. But that feedback, especially during supervision, the other side of that has to be considered as well, which is why we did the survey in the first place. We have a tremendously supportive staff. The Freeport High School staff loves helping students. Many of them are going to suffer in silence during this time period. Many of them are going to do what they are asked to do given the circumstances, and they're going to do that job at a high level, even if it is having a tremendous toll on their mental health, even if it is something that they are not comfortable with. They are going to do it, and they're going to put a smile on their face. And I think if there is any sort of leeway at all, if there's any sort of possibility to mitigate the risk the teachers are facing and give teachers the ability for the bulk of our staff, which wants to be fully vaccinated, to give them the sort of the safety and the peace of mind that is going to provide, I think a majority of the staff would strongly advocate for that. Thank you for your time, and also very impressive budget meeting.
Thank you, Tim. I think we'll give folks just a quick second to see if they are scrambling to find the raise hand button. Okay. Well, I would then take a motion to adjourn. Angela, Valley, thank you. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.